Ready? Good evening. This is the Ridgewood Village Council Public Workshop. The date is May 22nd, 2024. The time is 7:34. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Perrin.
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds is not here. Councilmember Whites.
Here.
Councilmember Winograd.
Here.
And Mayor Vagianos.
Here. Will you all please join us in a salute to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll go right to public comments.
Good evening. Ellie Gruber, 229 South Irving. I read your revised application, most of it, and on Appendix 25, I think it's page 535, but I'm not sure, it's in the 500s. You have a tree removal plan and tree count. I'm a little confused about the numbers. On September 13th at 11 a.m., Jovan did a inventory map, and he included 95 Norway maple invasive trees. He said evasive, but they're invasive. 127 other removals. That adds up to 222. Then 68 to be saved, to make, I think if my math is right, a total of 290. Then at 11:55, there was a email from Councilwoman Winograd saying, additionally, I counted from the new plan the following: 96 new shade trees, 41 pine trees, 182 green giants, and that adds up to 319. Then at 1 o'clock, 1:30, there's a letter from Declan, and he said, I assessed the trees at Shedland, and this is what I got. 96 Norway maples, which are considered invasive, 25 black cherries, 8 red maple, and 7 sugar maple, 21 pin oak, 25 red oak, 4 beech, 4 pignut hickory, 1 black locust, and that adds up, if my math is correct, to 191. So I'm a little mixed up about the numbers, but I do want to say one thing. This terrible, horrible, invasive Norway maple, if it is so terrible and horrible, I would like someone to come to my strip in front of my house where the village planted Norway maple. I'd like you to remove it if it's invasive. I'd like you to go around Ridgewood and remove all those terrible, terrible invasive Norway maples. We have a lot of Norway maples. To say that because they're invasive, you have to remove them in Shedler, and I don't understand any of your numbers, I think it's not right. I mean, one of the things he says that Jovan said, 127 removals for the field and the building, and I didn't do the playground. So there's more going to be removed for the playground. I mean, I think somehow you've got to get your numbers together. As it is, it's horrible. But I mean, just reading this, and Keith, I know, is busy looking at the numbers, but I don't think my numbers are wrong. Anyway, I'm concerned about this. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellie.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Ann Loving, P.O. Box 741, Ridgewood. Based on what I see on social media and on the agenda, the village is set to bond $350,000 for Shedler. Councilwoman Winograd has told us repeatedly that Shedler is fully funded. The manager says on social media this week that additional money may be needed for possible soil testing that may be required by the New Jersey DEP. The manager writes on social media that an additional $58,000 would be needed for that. So how do $350,000 and $58,000 jibe? Please explain what the extra $292,000 is going to be used for. I think this is really poor fiscal management. In most household budgets, if you have set aside, let's say, $50,000 for a remodel, and suddenly the roof starts leaking, you take from the money that you had set aside and you fix the roof, because the roof is a need and the remodel is a want. You live within your means. And as elected officials, it's really your responsibility to help all of us who pay the taxes, as do you, to live within our means. Most of the Shedler plan is a want, not a need. Removing contaminated soil is an urgent need. If that has to happen, it absolutely has to happen. Please, the ink is barely dry on our budget. Do not borrow any more money at taxpayers' expense. Take the $58,000 for possible soil remediation from the fully funded pot that we hear about all the time from Councilwoman Winograd. Finally, at the Board of Ed meeting on Monday night, the subject came up about possibly having parents sign a waiver if their children play on one of the BOE artificial turf fields. This is because the risks are known, the health risks are known, and just like parents sign waivers for a jillion other activities that their children could be involved in, this was suggested, and the Board of Ed is considering it. They're going to consult their attorney. Regardless of what the BOE decides, if this plan of yours, of most of yours, to put an artificial rubber rug down at Shedler goes through, I think you really need to have the parents of children who are going to play on it sign a waiver indicating that they are aware of the health risks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. See, there's an item on your agenda tonight concerning the purchase of bulk water from Hawthorne Water. I see Mr. Calby here. With all that is talked about in terms of PFAS, I would like Mr. Calby tonight, during the discussion of that topic, to offer an explanation as to what quality water are we getting from Hawthorne for this purchase. Are there any conditions on the water, or are we taking PFAS-laden water from Hawthorne that we're going to have to process ourselves to get rid of the PFAS? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Boyd. Anyone else from the audience? No, but we have someone on hybrid access. Christina, you're up.
Hi, Christina Millian, 530 West Saddle River Road. I just had a quick question. One, with the open house of the Zabriskie Shedler House, thank you all for arranging it. I think it's a great opportunity for the community to come down and obviously see the house, and also just, see where the Zabriskie Shedler property rests, and, try to hold some conversations with each other out there next to the highway. But I was just wondering if you operate under the assumption that every 30 minutes, 40 people come, which is a good opportunity. It's also a lot of people in the neighborhood. I just wanted to request if we could also have police presence or a traffic cop there, because as you know, we have a ton of families and kids in the neighborhood, and over the weekends, there's a ton of landscapers, and I'm just a little bit concerned about the traffic that's going to come and potential accidents. Thanks for considering.
Thank you, Christina. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I'm going to close public comment, and we will move on to our manager's report.
Mayor, if I may, I'd just like to respond to a couple public comments.
by
Thank
all
you. Ellie, I'd have to go back into those emails. You were correct. I was trying to search for them while you were speaking, but I'm not that quick. So we'll go back and do an assessment. I almost compare what you have in front of you as almost like a meeting, like we were having an email meeting, comparing numbers that had been inventoried prior. But let me go through and review those again, and then I'll get back to you in that regard. Ms. Loving, let me clear up this issue with the bond ordinance that's being considered by the Village Council tonight. So all of the previous bond ordinances that were approved for the Shedler property from 2023 during the capital budget process, which allocated an additional $500,000 that this council approved, dating all the way back to the initial bond ordinances. None of them addressed soil testing. So bond ordinances are specifically created by our bond counsel, which is an attorney who is an expert in the field of municipal bonding. And the bond ordinance must be for a specific purpose. The soil testing was never a specific purpose identified in any prior bond ordinances. So even the allocation of money, and right now we have not paid Matrix anything. As you know, they were out there a few Fridays ago. But we need this funding to be put in place in order to properly fund the soil testing initiative that is required by the December letter from Tom Farrell down at the DEP in order to properly test this soil. We've also included any type of archaeological considerations that need to be done on the property, in addition to any possible remediation. Now, I saw posted on social media over the weekend, you know, the sky was falling and we needed to identify what the remediation is. There is no known remediation. In fact, the test results are not even back in a report from Matrix yet to the village, much less to the DEP. So we have a lot of analysis that needs to be done. There is also a second phase of testing that has now been required by the DEP. The first phase was for the berm, and that amount was $38,330. That work effort has been substantially complete. As I mentioned, we're awaiting the report. The proposal that we now have from Matrix, which is being vetted by the DEP, will come to the council at a future work session, and the quote for that is $58,180. Future archaeological for a phase 2 could be north of $100,000 in talking to Grubb. So we're putting funding mechanisms in place to meet the needs and the requirements of the DEP, and the soil testing was not part of any prior bond ordinance that was adopted by this or any previous councils. So that is the purpose for the bond ordinance tonight. Mr. Loving, we are required by the DEP, or Ridgewood Water is required by the DEP, to have backup water supply agreements in place. That is with Hawthorne. Hawthorne is 100% PFAS compliant. I actually had a conversation with Mayor Lane in Hawthorne on Saturday. All of their treatment facilities are already treating for PFAS. So there should be no concern about the quality of water that we would be purchasing from Hawthorne in an emergent situation. And to Ms. Millian, we are having the open house at Shedler on June 8th. Carol in my office is spearheading that effort, and I think contingent upon how many people we have sign up prior to the event, we will obviously sit down with Chief Lyons, Chief Judge, our OEM director, our parks director, and we will have a pre-meeting to determine what the needs will be on that specific day to make sure that traffic control and all of the other things that we need to pull off a successful event are in place for June the 8th.
I'd also like to just chime in. So, Ellie, I don't have the email in front of me because we don't have our computers up here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay, I don't want to yell. So I believe, and I'm not sure, we can go back to the email tomorrow, that there are different ways of looking at Shedler. The number from Yovan was the park. I was interested in the field numbers, where this was going back and forth. So the field is one part of the park. So Declan went out because the discussion at that point was regarding the field, which was the subset of the full 7 acres. So you have Yovan's park numbers, which would include the respite area, the playground. I was interested in the field area numbers, so that's one. We sent Declan out because he is an arborist and he has more specialization in that. That being said, with respect to invasives, we are in a revision of the tree ordinance right now, and it is important to several members of, oh, Lorraine, you're here, that we're going to be detailing a more specific approach to invasives. They are part of our problem and our opportunity with trees. They are on the list of invasives. Additionally, every plan is required that trees be removed. In fact, prior to me taking my seat here, 3.5 acres were gone of trees, and no one on this council knows how many trees went. So every plan that is to be developed in Shedler, you know, to access the house, to build any size field, any size playground, required that the trees be removed. The reason I'm on that email is I wanted to make sure that for budgeting, that the trees we removed for the field, we had a replant effort in place. That's why I'm doing the count on the replant. So you have property, field, and I was focused on the field. So I hope that makes sense. And obviously, if you have questions, you can email me on that. I was unaware that there was we have a development, and then we have the field development within the development. Additionally, with the fully funded's for the field. And as Keith said, bond ordinances are uniquely specific. They're earmarked. So the field is fully funded. We've received estimates. We've gone to Glen Rock to look at their turf expenditure. That money's earmarked. It's why we can't take sidewalk money and plant trees with it. The way our bond ordinance is incredibly specific. The new money is here because citizens have complained and raised rightful concerns, and in order for us to address them, we have to hire outside help. Clearly, the soil is an issue. It was all before our time, and we need to test it. And we can't take that money from anything. So with respect to the roof analogy, we would just have to let the roof leak if we don't have more money, because we can't take money from trees, fields, or sidewalks and put it towards the house. That's why the new bond needs to be issued to address the new issues that have appeared since this council took their seat. So I hope that makes sense. I do want to say, because there's neighbors here, we are taking the concerns seriously. We're hiring the right people to address the concerns, but they're expensive, and that's why we need to introduce more money. And when I speak about the fully funded, it's always been fully funded field. You know, I don't even know, I just want to say this, it's workshop. I mean, when I'm looking at the house, how are we going to furnish it? We don't have anything. When we take these house tours, I think people should think, how are we going to furnish it? It's going to have to be period specific, and that'll be another expense as to what we want to bring into the house. Or are we going to have it like BYOC, bring your own chair? So we're going to have additional expenses that are outside the original scope. So I hope that makes sense. If anybody has any questions, please let us know. We've taken a lot of time to allocate the bonds and detail it and publicly disclose it, but it's just hard when money gets moved around. And if we have something new and there's no money, we can't move it.
And through you, Mayor, I just want to point out that this soil testing requirement from the DEP was completely unexpected. I don't think anybody expected to see the letter dated December 11th. I don't think that we could have ever anticipated the fact that they would add additional testing beyond the berm, where they want now grid samplings throughout the property. I do think that because there is a lot of attention and a lot of intensity around this project, and they are, by their own admission down at the DEP, getting emails each and every day from concerned citizens, I think they are doing everything that is within their purview to make sure that everything is clean and safe, and that all of the testing is done to a high level. So, and keep in mind too, as Matrix gives us their plan, we then have to send that plan down to the DEP, and they have to approve the proposal that has been submitted by our professionals, whether it be Matrix on the soil testing side or whether it be Grubb Associates on the archaeological side. We don't get to decide the scope of work. The DEP gets to decide the scope of work, and then we have to pay whatever the costs are to meet those standards that the DEP has set. So I think that's just an important point to make on this.
And you know, I know we're going to talk about this later, but that was exactly what I was thinking as I was reading through the packet for this week. I know that we have some folks who, we have some disagreements with on terms of what we do with Shedler property. This is an area where I think we have universal and unanimous consent and agreement that we have to test the soil. We should do the archaeological digs. And to the extent that we can't use money that's already been bonded for Shedler to do that, we have to vote on a bond tonight. But there's no way I think any of us up here would allow the public onto that property, and no matter what happens to that property, if we have any doubts around the safety of the soil. So I'm sort of surprised to hear any real, and I guess again we'll talk about it later. But I would be surprised to hear any serious counter arguments here, given that this is the one area where I think we actually have an agreement on.
And 2 points to the councilman's point. One, I can remember at one of my first meetings here back in the summer, residents in the Shedler neighborhood getting up and requesting the archaeological survey that the council then approved. And 2, there was an urgency to the testing that was brought up at the podium after the December 11th letter was received, and we brought the proposal from Matrix to the council for their consideration. So I agree with Councilman Weitz. I think there is a general consensus that these work efforts need to get done, and they are the only work efforts that would be included in the bond ordinance that's up for consideration this evening. On a safety issue, and I used the word safety and he used the word safety, and I just don't want anything to be taken out of context, the comments that I made at an earlier council meeting, which came directly from Tom Farrell, who was our point of contact at the DEP, still stand. There is not an eminent concern for safety relative to the soil on the property. The question still remains, is the soil that was brought in on the property from these other locations, does that soil test to the standard that applies today that the DEP has set? And that is the question. Those are the questions that Matrix needs to answer in their report.
And I just want to say thanks to Siobhan and Keith for those very good explanations and addressing the concerns of the public. And forgive me for having moved on to the manager report. I'm
All
a
good.
little out of my rhythm.
Would you like to do that now?
Yep. So let's, anybody else have any comments? No? We're all good? Great. Let's go.
Okay, so some good news to report under the manager's report. This week, we are milling and paving all of the tree streets, all the streets that connect Ridgewood Avenue to Franklin Avenue in the Central Business District, along with the second portion of Dayton. So we are confident that by Friday afternoon, the streets will be reopened, freshly paved. I want to thank Chris Rudeshauser and his staff, along with the contractor Smith Sonde. They've been working overnight to do this work to lessen the burden on our business district as far as interruption in accessibility to the businesses. I think all is going well, and we're looking forward to having freshly paved streets in the downtown. Also good news, I learned today that the bridge engineering company that we are using for the Kings Bridge pedestrian bridge, the specifications have been finalized. I leaned on Mr. Rudeshauser this week to try to set a bid date, and that bid date is going to be June 26th. So we will receive bids for the repairs to the Kingsbridge Lane footbridge on June 26th. I want to thank the Ridgewood Japanese Association for their very kind invitation to their luncheon yesterday, which I had the opportunity to attend with Chief Lyons and Chief Judge. Their outreach was exemplary, and I want to thank them for including us in that luncheon yesterday. Yesterday was also Employee Mental Health Day. I want to thank our health department and the Stigma-Free Task Force for putting that together. We had a lunch and learn. We had 7 to 10 minute massages down in the senior lounge. The mayor looks disappointed he wasn't invited. We gave away some real critical material on our employee assistance program to try to help employees if they are having any struggling circumstances in their life, both professionally or personally. I want to thank the Streets Division for their work in cleaning out the culvert along the PSE&G right-of-way between the homes on Irving and the Stevens Field. I've had multiple meetings with the superintendent of schools and with Chris Rudeshauser out there with those residents, and this week we're actually to perform the work to clean out that ditch to try to mitigate some of the flooding that occurs in that section of town. I do want to extend my thoughts and good wishes to the folks in Glen Rock. Unfortunately, there was a violent incident that occurred at one of their ball fields last night. The reason I bring it up is I just want to extend our thanks to our emergency responders here in Ridgewood who responded to that incident. Our police department, patrol division responded. We were able to send support from the Detective Bureau, and ultimately our mobile command center from OEM was deployed, and Jeremy Kleiman, our director of OEM, was on the scene last night. I know the mayor reached out to the mayor of Glen Rock. I had the opportunity last night to talk to Lenore Benjamin, the business administrator over in Glen Rock, and we offered any support in response to that situation. On Friday, we had a tour with the Historic Preservation Commission at the Shedler property. I don't want to steal Councilman White's thunder on that under his report, But I want to thank Carol in my office and Chris Rudershauser for arranging that and making sure that our HPC had a sneak peek at the house as we prepare to open it for the public on June the 8th. And lastly, I just want to mention there are a number of items on tonight's council meeting agenda where we are actually making purchases from our capital budget that was approved in 2024. It's primarily vehicles and equipment for fleet, water pollution control, parks, and recycling and sanitation. And at our next council meeting, I will be able to thoroughly report on some of the timeframes for the physical projects, the public works projects that we are looking to accomplish under the 2024 capital budget plan. Just a few announcements. The Memorial Day holiday is this coming Monday. It will be observed in Memorial Park at Van Ness Square at 11 a.m. with American Legion Post 53. We encourage everyone to come and honor those who were killed in action. Village of Ridgewood offices will be closed this Monday, the 27th, in observance of Memorial Day. There will be no sanitation, recycling, or yard waste collection on that day. Please check your village calendar for the adjusted garbage, recycling, and yard waste collection dates. The Ridgewood Guild is proud to sponsor Music in the Night for the 14th season and will provide music in various locations on Friday nights starting May 31st through Labor Day. Graden Pool will be open on Saturday, June 1st from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. These will be the hours for the entire season through Labor Day, September 2nd. Come celebrate Ridgewood Pride Day at Van Ness Square Park on Saturday, June 1st, rain or shine, from 1 to 2 p.m. There will be speakers and performers, and I know Councilmember Winograd and her committee have been tirelessly working to set up that event in celebration of Pride Month. On Saturday, June 1st, there will be a mobile paper shredding, electronics, computers, tire recycling, and unwanted medication event for all Bergen County residents at the Campgaw Mountain Reservation from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Any further information can be found at bcua.org. The Holly Festival will be held on Sunday, June 2nd, at the parking lot of McMurphy's from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. There will be snacks and colors. Music bands include Jam, Sticks and Stones, and Acoustic Dudes. The primary election will be held on Tuesday, June 4th. That's a week from this coming Tuesday. The polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And our upcoming village council meetings, June 5th is a work session, June 12th is a public meeting, June 26th is a work session. All begin at 7:30 p.m. And that concludes my report, Mayor.
Thanks, Keith. And let's go to council reports. Evan?
Great, thanks so much, Paul. So it's been 2 weeks, and it's been busy, but I will be quick because I know we've got a big agenda in front of us. So first, just want to call out the library. We had the library meeting last night. If you haven't been to the library lately, they've completed their renovations, mostly on the first floor. The front desk area was redone, the art studio was redone, the teen room was redone. It's really, really gorgeous. Would encourage everyone to go check out the library. Notably in the teen room, as a result of all the work that was done in there, the circulation of young adult books was up, I believe, by 40%. And by all accounts, all the tables that we have set up for those young adults are constantly busy. Really, really well done. Over the summer, they're going to be working on mezzanine renovations. So that'll be the second floor, and we were looking at a number of different designs. But one of the designs that I'm really excited about, and that they've already confirmed they're going to do, is build study rooms on this sort of second and a half floor, if you know what I'm talking about, near the circulation desk on the second floor. Those would be little spaces that can be reserved for Zoom meetings, for for quiet meetings. Really, really happy to see that. The current space we have isn't really up to snuff for that, but really excited about all the library renovations and encourage everyone to go check it out. Secondly, to Keith's point, he did in fact steal my thunder. I did want to thank him, Carol, Chris Rudershauser for giving us a sneak peek of the Shedler House. Now that the certificate of occupancy was granted, we were able to arrange a small tour before the June 8th public tour for the Historical Preservation Committee. Again, would really encourage, especially those folks in the neighborhood that really so strongly advocated for preserving that house, to really come up with some ideas as to now what to do with it. That's really, I think, the perplexing issue is we have this house, we spent $2.6 million on it. If we allow it to sit fallow, it will fall into disrepair. We need to figure out some way to get some use out of that property. And I would really encourage anyone with any pragmatic ideas to please bring them forward. Would encourage everyone to go see the house on June 8th, and Keith, thank you for setting that up for the whole community. But again, really appreciated the Friday afternoon we got to spend with the HPC, being able to see the property first. Want to thank Pam for inviting me to the Climate Fresque, sponsored by Green Ridgewood. It was a really fun way to learn about a very serious topic. If it ever happens again in Ridgewood, I encourage others to go see it as well. But really an interactive way to understand climate change and ways to deal and to mitigate it. But really, really wonderful event, and thank you, Pam, for allowing me to go in your place. Also want to thank, again, Keith and as well as Lorraine. We met with several officials here in the village about 2 intersections that both Lorraine and I are hoping to see a little more study on, see if we can get it a little safer. I know, Keith, you'll be reporting back on that probably sometime, hopefully next month, because I do want to see some movement on those 2 intersections to see what could be done to potentially make them safer for our residents. But it was a really productive meeting, and really appreciated having the police, having the engineer, and again, Keith and the rest of your staff there. Finally, had my July 4th meeting this past Monday as well. Really, really excited. Most people don't realize this, but the entire July 4th parade is paid for with private funds. There's no tax dollars used for our July 4th parade. The reason I say that is to encourage all of you to think about donating. If you go to the website, there's a link. I donated some money this week. Doesn't have to be a lot. Every little bit helps. But it's one of those things that is just, it is a calling card of Ridgewood, and we do it without asking the taxpayers to kick in money. So I'd really encourage all of you to potentially think about donating money to the July 4th parade. We are selling 50-50 raffle tickets as well. I'm holding them in my hand because I plan on hitting up all 4 of my fellow council members. So I'm calling all 4 of you out. I'm going to come see you guys at the end of the meeting. But the 50-50 is another great way to make sure that we continue this tradition without further burdening the taxpayers. But again, the volunteers for July 4th are just fantastic. It's going to be an amazing event. I hope to see all of you at the parade, and I'll see all of you at the end of this meeting.
Thanks, Evan, I think. Siobhan?
Sure. So I have several updates. One, just to reiterate, June 1st is Pride. It's going to be sponsored by the village. It's in Van Ness Square, 1 to 2. I see some students here. Saga will be there, the a cappella group from Ridgewood High School, and 3 local performers. So I encourage everybody to be there for a part of it. It's going to, after it's over, several Main Street businesses are collaborating with us and offering things on their menus. Some are extending a discount. So June 1st at Van Ness Square, please be there. Wear your best rainbow. Last week I met with the Shade Tree Commission, and we were lucky enough to have NJDEP, the forestry came. So our forester's name assigned to our big trees is a man named Joseph Bennett, and he runs a program specific, this is very interesting for you, Mr. Liu, on big trees and how big trees are effectively the workhorses of the tree community. That if you had 3 little dogwoods, which are beautiful and valuable, they don't do as much work as a big tree. And to give you a scale of work, they're about 600 times more powerful. There are incidents in the state of New Jersey where people take down oaks, which have longer roots, and it affects the flooding because the oaks are so proficient at slurping up the water on the big tree side. I want to thank NJDEP for sending him. I want to thank the residents that took the time to nominate their private trees because Ridgewood is on the map. And our 5 trees that we nominated as a council are progressing through the Big Tree program, and we're going to get a scorecard and a report card on them. So thank you to him and all of Shade Tree. We also discussed the idea of, with Deputy Mayor Perrin, we're talking about taking some of the Columbia students' recommendations and launching a rain barrel program. Shade Tree is particularly interested in this. Effectively, one rain barrel unto itself won't help with flood mitigation, but if we can inspire 80 to 100 residents to do it, particularly people who live on higher land, such as the west side or the heights, it will affect our runoff. So the village, we're having some very fun discussions about rain barrel. What they should look like is super fun, let me tell you. And Shade Tree is going to be partnering with Green Ridgewood, and I'm hoping the whole community joins us in that and starts to think where a rain barrel will look good in your yard. So stay tuned on that. I want to thank Shade Tree most especially, and I'm very excited to say this, that last year due to budget constraints, it was a really rough budget. We didn't have as much money to give Shade Tree, and of course everybody was disappointed. And a very innovative idea came out of Shade Tree that rather than plant a tree, which comes with a significant $100 price tag, we could plant a sapling. And we could have younger people and council people and lawyers, because Matt helped, plant trees and have the homeowner assume the care of the sapling, which is around $35. Last year, we planted 31 saplings. 30 are thriving. One has gone missing, which we won't talk about. But this year, the program in Somerville we've had 92 people sign up to adopt a sapling, and that's great for a whole host of reasons. One, we've engaged the school, we've engaged the community. We're hoping with the survival rate that 92 saplings exist and none go missing next year. I want to expressly thank my Shade Tree Commission, because they heard no from this council and they refused to believe it, and they found a more sustainable, economical approach, and I just think it's an impressive number. And I want to thank Councilmember Reynolds, who is adopting. She's an official sapling adopter. So it's a great program. If you don't live in Somerville and you're interested in helping Shade Tree plant, dig, or execute, we're looking for volunteers. It's sort of a lucky position to be in, but we are going to need a lot of people to dig 92 holes. So thank you to them, and I thought everybody would be, mostly Lorraine, very excited about that. I also had the luxury of going to the press release. I want to be quick with NJDOT, and I want to thank Deputy Mayor Perrin and Mayor Vagianos. We went to behind BF. We went to a street that doesn't have sidewalks, and we talked about the introduction of sidewalks. What was interesting to me is that sidewalks are sometimes at odds with trees too, and that was a big concern of how many trees are going to need to be removed to execute the sidewalks. But it was a great meeting. I want to thank everybody from our police, fire, our whole entire professional staff, and our state assembly who came. So that was a wonderful, wonderful project, and you guys will be hearing more on it. And I'm just hoping that as we put these sidewalks in, we can minimize some of the shade tree removal. And I know Lorraine and I are going to be working on that. I did also want to say we had a meeting with Access. I'm not going to tell you how it looks, but our intern, NJ Aguilar, has created a Access logo, which is going to force a lot of discussion within the community. He will be coming to a future workshop. It was unanimously approved by Access, and it's going to be a way for us to talk about Access in its holistic approach, not just in terms of autism shields, which is neurodivergent, but mobility, hearing loss. I'm very grateful to our intern, MJ, for doing that. And I also wanted to say to the whole council, we've partnered with Joy Doe, and they've done, that was the press that you saw for the police training. They're here locally. They live in the Old Pease Library. Access is taking a field trip on June 5th at 1 o'clock to see how the operation works, to see how we can do a better job of interfacing with them. We have about 8 members from Access coming, some interns, but now that we have so much housing uptown, we have a social responsibility to see how we can have better work placement, better understanding with our first responders, and I would encourage anybody who wants to attend to come with Access on our field trip. I also love that I'm taking an adult field trip, and it's June 5th at 1 p.m., and that's it.
Thanks, Siobhan. Lorraine?
Thank you, Paul. Opening night at Cash Shell is coming up. It's Thursday, June 6th from 8 to 10. It'll be the Ridgewood High School Band's Tunes in June. Please come out and support the Shell. Let's see. CSAC, we met on May 16th. There were several residents there who all presented concerns in their neighborhood. One person from Chestnut Street stated that the new Chestnut Village has brought many additional pedestrians walking to and from the complex, and requested painted crosswalks on Robinson Lane, crossing Oak, Walnut, and Cottage Streets. The village will be looking into that and make a recommendation. An Eastbrook Road resident stated that parking and traffic surrounding the Glen School has become very hazardous and dangerous. CSAC recommended that the resident bring their concerns to the Board of Ed and the Glen School administrators. But also the Ridgewood Police Department said they'll observe and see if regulating the nearby streets is something that might be warranted. A Ridgewood Avenue resident stated the intersection of North Irving and East Ridgewood Avenue is very dangerous for pedestrians, which it does scare me. Kids walking to and from the high school every day. Nobody stops for those kids, ever. Well, I shouldn't say ever, but most people don't stop. The Ridgewood Police Department said that this intersection happens to be at the top of their list for installing the flashing pedestrian crossing signals. So hopefully that will be happening soon. Regarding the intersection of Oak and Glen, which is the meeting that Evan talked about that we went to, the county has a consultant doing traffic counts on that blinking light there to see if another light is warranted. There's one very close by at the corner of Maple and Glen, but they are looking into it, which is huge. So hopefully we will be getting some recommendations on how to help that intersection. Overbrook Road parking regulations were discussed. There was a resident that came. Overbrook has no parking on one side of the street from, I think there's no parking on one side of the street ever, and the other side of the street, there's no parking 9 to 3, and I think it's year-round, not just during the school months. So the engineering department said that they were going to send letters to the Overbrook residents and see what kind of interest there is, if any, in changing the regulations, or if people are okay keeping it the way they are. What else? Project Pride.
Wait, Lorraine, can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Are we going to take the letters and send them to everybody? Because you and I met with the other resident before the Overbrook. Can we send it to the whole region?
I wanted to talk to you about
Okay.
that,
We'll talk
and
tomorrow.
we'll talk to
Okay.
engineering and see. So Project Pride, if anybody has been downtown since Sunday, we planted all of the flower pots in the Central Business District bright and early Sunday morning. Everybody came with a big smile on their face, and they were ready to work. Special thanks to Perry's Florist in Glen Rock. They supplied us with beautiful plants at a really great price. They're always fabulous. I recommend going there if you need any flower needs. Also, the Parks Department had 2 employees help us, Scott and Dave. We couldn't have done it without them. They were great. They came, they brought the heavy bags of soil and the garbage cans, picked them up, watered the flowers at the end, and they also planted the hanging baskets in Van Ness Square, because they're tall, and liability-wise, we really can't let volunteers do that. So thank you to Scott and Dave. Thank you to Pam, who came and showed up and helped.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And we had so many volunteers. It was great. I put a little thing on It Takes a Village, and Tony Damiano also sent out to members of the Guild, and we had several shop owners help us, and many residents who I'd never met before just came, showed up. Now we're friends. It's great. They were all wonderful, and we couldn't have done it without everybody. I just want to say, if any of the downtown landlords are listening right now, the flower pots look fabulous, but the tree wells now look really, really bad. They are in desperate need of weeding. It is your responsibility to weed the tree wells in front of your properties. Please do so. And I also want to send a reminder out about water regulations, because just in my daily running errands, I see underground sprinklers on all the time. I think people don't realize the water regulations that we have are 365 days a year. They've been in effect 6 years, at least 5 or 6 years. So it doesn't change at all. It's 365 days a year. If you have underground sprinklers, can only water between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. on the days that you're allowed. And if you have, the regular sprinklers, you can only water before 10 a.m. or after 6 p.m. on the days that you're allowed. So there's never watering allowed during the heat of the day when the water just evaporates, and it's a waste of watering. So please follow the rules. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine.
Mayor,
Pam?
if I may, just to piggyback off of Councilwoman Reynolds' comments, both the irrigation enforcement and the enforcement of the maintenance of the tree wells in the downtown has started with code enforcement. I had a lengthy conversation with our code enforcement officer this morning. So I know the Councilwoman put out a warning. I'll put out a more stern warning that we are going to start enforcement this week, and people will be warned, but if they don't comply, it will be followed up by a summons. So I just wanted to stress that.
And I seriously think we should talk about summonses and dollar amounts. I just think that it needs to be higher.
Yeah. Yeah, I can have John do a review on the water irrigation. We might want to include Mr. Calby as well, but we can certainly start to look at that at the staff level and then bring you some recommendations.
And just because this is a workshop, I'm going to go for broke and talk about trees for a minute. So Lorraine, Pam, and I, and I'm assuming I just didn't get a chance to chat with everybody. This tree discussions come from many angles. Obviously, Pam with CBDAC, Lorraine from Project Pride, and me from Shade Tree. We have spent, meaning we citizens of Ridgewood, a significant amount of capital on the new tree planting, and the wells become incredibly disheartening. So before we talked about fining, we sent this letter, which I had circulated to the full council, reminding people of the obligation. But when the wells become overrun, it detracts from the trees, and we really, I do think we should put it on a workshop discussion, because we'd love to see the fines become iterative if they could. You know, it's, the average cost of a tree uptown is around $1,100 when you take the burden of watering, which is a significant amount of money. And when you have like a weed the size of a small child next to a new young tree, no, some of them are really tall, it becomes dangerous. And while we're very grateful to the volunteers for Mulch Monday, we can't be that reliant. And because I'm so reliant on my volunteers not being in school, Mulch Monday is almost a little too late. You know, it's after school because you guys have to go to school, and that stinks because then no one can help during the week. So I think we should put it on. You agree, Pam?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We'll have code enforcement review both. We'll set up a meeting with Rich, and we'll review the current fine structure. I'm not familiar with it, but we'll take a look at it, and then we'll come back with recommendations.
I also hope that our contract with the company that's going to be filling the gator bags around the new trees goes into effect soon. Because
I
we've had
actually signed it yesterday.
Okay, because we've had some really hot days, and to kill a tree only takes a couple of hot days.
Sure.
I also want to say that the local ordinance, as I read it, requires maintenance of the sidewalk as well. So if you have coffee cups, spoons, et cetera, it is the merchant's and the landlord's obligation to clean up that sidewalk. Nobody else is out there doing it for you. It is your obligation to keep the sidewalk clean, and that also includes weeds. So this is something merchants need to step outside their front door and take a look. It will be very helpful to your business to have an attractive facade and street front. Is it my turn?
It is.
Okay.
I thought you had already started by now.
Since our last council meeting, the Open Space Committee has conducted 2 park walks, one at Pleasant Park and another at Gypsy and Kings Pond. I've been to those parks before, and I still learned a lot, so I urge you to go to these. We are having 10 park walks throughout the season. The next one is going to be June 1st, Saturday, 10 a.m. You can go to this, and then you can go to the Pride celebration in the afternoon. It will be at Habernickel Family Park, and I'm going to be the tour guide. And let's see, we have a joint meeting coming up between the Parks and Recreation Board and the Open Space Committee on May 28th here in this building. That's in person at 7:30, I think. And Green Ridgewood, as you heard, we had the climate fresque again. It's really interesting, very educational, and so thank you to the committee for bringing that. Also, see the article in Ridgewood Living about Green Ridgewood this month. You get an idea of the scope of everything this group is looking at, which is pretty broad. And last, Green Ridgewood and Green Team have openings on their committees, and the closing date is tomorrow. So if you want to submit an application, it's in the clerk. If you go onto the website under the clerk's office, you go to forms, and once you're there, you go to page 2, and you'll find the volunteer leadership form. and you submit it to the clerk's office. You can submit it electronically, or you can drop it off in person. And then the Central Business District Advisory Committee met last week, and we discussed the new building, which you can see on North Broad Street, which was built after the original one burnt down. I think it's a really pretty facade. The building hasn't opened yet, but take a look. And let's see. We also discussed blade signs, which are the ones that are perpendicular to a building. And I think we introduced that at our last meeting, and we're going to be hearing it at our public meeting and voting. Let's see, the steering committee continues to meet to investigate the possibility of a special improvement district in our village. And we had a field trip this week and walked all around town trying to determine the boundaries of a SID if we were to have one. Central Business District Advisory Committee's next meeting is going to be June 13th via Zoom. I also did want to say I had the privilege of giving a talk at Oakcroft, which is really an important architectural and landscaping feature on Ridge Road. You don't have to go wait for my next lecture. You can go and look at it yourself. When you pass it, you'll look at and you'll know that it's special. It's different from anything else in Ridgewood, and it's 100 years old. I think Keith mentioned that the American Legion is giving its memorial event on Monday. It's always very moving, and I believe the keynote speaker is Ed Houlihan. Also, this past Saturday, the American Legion Post 53 did planting of flags in Velo Cemetery, and it was quite a turnout of the Scouts and Project Interact high school students and their parents, and I was allowed to plant a flag too. And now I know that when you want to find a veterans, a fallen soldier's gravestone, you're looking for a very, very tiny little circle that's embedded in the headstone. So join us Monday. Also, Graydon Pool looks ready to go. It's very tempting on a hot day. It looks beautiful, and I can't wait to go. That's all I have.
Thank you, Pam. And I will be very brief, but I will tell you that on Sunday, the Community Center Advisory Board hosted a lovely event. It was, they billed it as an intergenerational ping pong tournament, and I participated in it. And there were children of all ages from 4 to 74, and it was just great. There must have been 30 people there playing. We had a great time, and I want to put out a special thanks to Deanna Shablik, who came in on a Sunday to do this with gusto and with pleasure. As Evan said, the Climate Fresque was really, really a great event. I don't care who you are, you could have learned something there. I was on Ellie's team. I had the good fortune of that, and it was just a really good day. The park walks that Pam goes on and leads, she took me on a private park walk tour a few weeks ago, and it was just beautiful. Memorial Day, as Pam mentioned, if you haven't been to the Memorial Day service at Van Ness Park, if you go, you will be happy that you did. You will walk away with a sense of appreciation that you didn't have before you got there. And yeah, doesn't Graydon look great? I want to thank the Parks Department. I want to thank Nancy and her staff. It is so inviting. I've driven by there several times the last couple of days. I'm going, oh yeah, it's Graydon season. So, and with that, let's go to our regular agenda. Keith?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, under presentations, we have a bike lane proposal. We've had some preliminary meetings with 3 Ridgewood High School students who are participating in the AP Environmental Science class. And I know that Deputy Mayor Perrin and Councilmember Winograd have been active and discussing the potential for these bike lanes with the students, so I'll turn it over to them for a proper introduction.
I'll call up Emily Scharfenberg, Maya Riedel, and Zoe Becker. These girls have researched and drawn and written and revised and rehearsed, and their timing couldn't be better. So I'll turn it over to them now.
I do also want to say they're all graduating in a month, and they did this while studying. They would have been here earlier, but hopefully they all got 5s on their AP exam, and their teacher from Ridgewood High School is here as well.
No pressure. Yeah. All right, hello, this is our bike lane proposal. I'm Emily Scharfenberg.
I'm Maya Riedel.
And I'm Zoe Becker.
And as you heard, we're 3 seniors at Ridgewood High School for our AP Environmental Science class. We have a long-term sustainability project where we are able to look at environmentally concerning issues around Ridgewood, and we are able to propose solutions for those concerns. And 3 of us are very avid bikers, and so we wanted to focus on methods of eco-friendly transportation. So here is our proposal to make Ridgewood more bike-friendly.
And we please do ask to leave any questions to the end of the presentation.
So for our proposal, we want to create a bike route along the east side of Ridgewood to make it more accessible for people in Ridgewood, more specifically students, to get to school more safely.
So the road that we have been focusing on is Pleasant Avenue.
Ladies, I'm going to ask that you speak a little more loudly and make sure, as you can see I do, you have to get close to the microphone so that everyone in the audience and at home can hear. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Because it's such a good proposal, we don't want anybody to miss it.
All right, thank you. So we have been looking at Pleasant Avenue, which we believe is a great road for various different reasons. Number one, and most importantly, it is feasible to have a bike lane on this road based off of the measurements and conditions, which we will go over in future slides. Also, Pleasant Avenue is located in a very central area on the east side of Ridgewood, where there are many schools. So the schools are represented by the yellow diamonds on the maps. There is Hawes Elementary and Somerville, which are right off of Pleasant Ave. And then you have Travell Elementary, Benjamin Franklin Middle School, and Ridgewood High School, all in very close proximity. So there would be a lot of students using this bike lane to get to school. Another great reason is that it connects to a bike lane that's currently on Grove Street, so that would be very ideal. As you can see, there are 2 separate colors highlighted on Pleasant Ave, and this is how we'd go about initiating the bike lane. So the orange section on South Pleasant Ave is scheduled for a repavement in 2024, and so we believe that this is the best time to put in a proposal so that once the road is fresh and repaved, it can be painted on. And the red part, North Pleasant Avenue, would be when grants, funding, and conditions permit, we would have that bike lane be continued all the way up to Glen Avenue. Currently, there is a bike route in Ridgewood, mainly on the east side. This was created by an Eagle Scout a few years ago. The difference between the bike route versus what the bike lane would be is the bike route has no infrastructure on the streets for bikers. Instead, it's supported by the green bike route signage. So this would mean that there is nowhere for the biker to be on the street, but it's like the biker can follow the path around. Our bike lane would be on Pleasant, which there is a small bit of the bike route connected to Pleasant Ave, which is a positive, so that bikers could go from the bike lane to the bike route and vice versa.
And then here's just a picture showing that bike route that the Eagle Scouts put in a couple years ago. And then now we're going to briefly get into the measurements and how we found out that it was feasible to put a bike lane on Pleasant Ave. So at the beginning of this process, we wanted to make sure that the roads we were considering were feasible to have a bike lane on them. So from our research, we have found that a 2-way road has to be a minimum of 20 feet, and a bike lane has to be a minimum of 4 feet, preferably 5 feet. So we have come to the conclusion that A road would be ideal if it's a minimum of 28 feet and 8 inches, but closer to 30 feet. And Pleasant does fall into these requirements.
So for the paint on this bike lane, we want to make it green with a white border so it is easily visible for both the bikers and the drivers. We also think that it would be best that there's no physical barriers due to the current conditions and structures of the road. We don't want to make any changes to the structure. And as with anything, there are some obstacles, so we want to briefly cover intersections, storm drains, and street parking.
Pleasant Avenue does run through some busier roads in Ridgewood, so those would be Grove Street, Spring Avenue, East Ridgewood Avenue, and then Linwood Avenue. And we recognize these as being intersections that could pose a concern. However, we do believe having the bike lane in this area would make it very clear to bikers as where to be in the road. We would continue the bike lane through the intersection with a dashed pattern. So it's sort of similar to a sidewalk, but for bikes. And this could also be precautionary for cars as they have to make sure they're paying attention for bikers on that specific part of the street.
And next is storm drains. So storm drains are usually on the sides of the roads where bikers are supposed to be biking. We're making sure that our bike lanes are wide enough so there is room for the bikers to bike still in the bike lane while going around the storm drain. That way they don't have to go off onto the actual road and get in the way of the cars driving on that road.
And then finally, we took into account the street parking situation on Pleasant Ave. The good thing about street parking in this road is that it's spotty per se, so there are sections that have it, but there's also stretches without any street parking allowed. And as of right now, it is okay if cars park in the bike lane. The bikers would just have to caution and go around the car, which doesn't pose too big of an issue for the bike lane. But also a positive is that the presence of a bike lane could possibly deter street parking, which would be a plus to the bikers.
And now we want to acknowledge the benefits of this bike lane. So this is quoted from the Village of Ridgewood Master Plan, and it states that bicycle infrastructure is a preferred mode of commute and would help alleviate congestion, support the economy, improve health, and reduce emissions. And we took this because we think it represents what we are looking for with this bike lane here in Ridgewood. And first, we want to start out with safety as a benefit. Throughout this whole project, we have made safety our first priority because we want to create an environment here in Ridgewood where kids can get to school safely and sustainably. So cars are more aware of bikers and drivers and drive more cautiously when there are bike lanes. If we are able to get those green and white markers on the road, that differentiates where the bikers and drivers are supposed to be very clearly. And hopefully with this added safety, there will be less future bike-related accidents. Additionally, this gives bikers in a designated spot to be. A big problem right now is that parents are telling their children to bike on sidewalks, which although seems safer to the parents, it isn't too safe because it causes an increased risk of collision between pedestrians walking on the sidewalks and bikers, and they really aren't supposed to be on the sidewalks. And by adding these bike lanes on these roads, it will make them safer and hopefully promote parents to get their children to be on these on the bike lanes on the roads. And then finally, hopefully, if more kids are using the bike lanes and utilizing them on their way to school, there will be less cars on the road and overall a reduction in congestion on the roads.
And then from an environmental standpoint, the reduction of cars will mean there will be less harmful emissions from cars, and there will be less harmful releases of greenhouse gases from the cars, such as carbon dioxide, which can stay in the atmosphere for up to 1,000 years, which will speed up the harmful effects of climate change and destroy our local ecosystems.
And then looking to a more individual level, biking is great for people's health. It can increase the strength of the heart muscles, which can reduce the risk of heart disease. It increases mobility and flexibility, can lower stress, lower obesity, and also, as with any form of exercise, it can increase concentration and memory, which is key for students. They would get a great start to their school day. And Ridgewood is also a very accessible and commutable town. From the master plan, it's stated that the entire village is within a 2-mile or 15-minute bike ride from the train station downtown area, which is very encouraging to bikers as they don't have to go too far to get places, and they know that they can help the environment while also helping their own individual health.
And now we want to briefly highlight some of the funding possibilities because it's important that you have funding behind these projects. So here are some that we have found throughout our research that could apply to bike lane projects, but specifically the New Jersey Department of Transportation Bikeway Grant Program we have found could be a good option for future bike lane infrastructure and expanding these bike lanes. And also, if you're interested, there is some more information about these individual funding opportunities on the back of that paper. And then finally, we want to end off this presentation on a hopeful note. So here's a successful example of Hoboken that in the previous years, or the recent years, has implemented bike-friendly infrastructure. And they have done bike lanes, shared bike road symbols, and really made a town where it's very environmentally friendly and gets people outside and going to work and school in a more sustainable way. Additionally, there has been a great reduction in the fatalities of bike and car-related accidents. So we hope here in Ridgewood we could move forward and create a more environmental friendly neighborhood for bikers like Hoboken, and we can do this by starting with the bike lane on Pleasant. Thank you.
Questions, council members?
I'll start with a comment. First, that was just so well done. So often in this job, people come to you with these great ideas, but the hard part is implementing them. It's asking hard questions like, is there enough room in the road? How do we pay for it? All the boring stuff. And you guys tackled that. That was great. Presentation. You seem to hit all the boxes. Really, really well done, guys. I guess my question, just for Keith, I see here that it looks like the memo's coming from Chris. Is the engineering department in agreement with the proposal?
They are.
I don't know how we don't vote for this then. Guys, great job.
Thank you.
Aye.
I know we're going to go right down the line. Yeah.
So great job. This was excellent. My husband is an avid bike rider. He'll be thrilled. How wide is North Pleasant and South Pleasant the same width? Do you know?
I think as it goes down the road, it does vary depending on the certain parts of roads and past certain intersections. But from the parts we have measured, we don't have the precise measurements, but it is around like 30 feet.
Okay. So I'm just curious. So this is just going to be on one side of the road because it's not wide enough to have bike lanes on both. Is that correct?
I'm pretty sure it would be on both sides of the road.
Okay. That's cool. Because on this, I'm just curious, on this one, where you show the painting, you show the bike lane is on one side, right? And then what's the yellow line?
I believe it's just a barrier on the other side of the road, but for Pleasant Ave, we would have the goal of
think on
having
both
them
sides?
on each side, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I love this where you have the bike lane and then there's like a white area where I guess cars cannot drive. Because that's the part that makes me nervous. If you're riding on the bike lane and the cars are literally right next to you. So, I mean, I love this look. If there's enough room on Pleasant to do that, that'd be fabulous. And the other thing, did you do in your research, is there any idea of how much this would cost?
When we did the research, we came up with a big difference between what it could cost, so we aren't 100% sure, and I don't want to give a not real number.
No, I'm just curious. I have no idea. I mean, it seems that it's really almost just paint. It shouldn't be too expensive. The road, like you said, the road is going to be paved. It's a perfect opportunity to do it at the same time that the road is being paved. But
that was my thinking too. 'Cause it's just paint, right? I mean, I think that's really all it is.
So in the memo, which through you, Mayor, I'll speak to now, which is number 8 in your agenda. We had a preliminary meeting with the engineering department, with the 3 students, where we vetted a lot of the same concerns and discussed a lot of the questions that are being asked tonight. Chris is in favor of this. The proposed marked bike lane for Pleasant Avenue would connect the 3 village schools, which he was very much in favor of, as well as the existing bike lane on Grove Street and the village's bike routes that were installed a number of years ago. In addition, and I think this might address Councilwoman Reynolds' question, the village submitted an application to the New Jersey Department of Transportation for the 2024 grant cycle to resurface South Pleasant from Grove Street to Euston Lane by Hawes. So what Chris would like to do is incorporate the marked bike lanes as part of that design. So that about summarizes what the resolution before you tonight. If there's a general consensus to approve it, it'll be added to the next public meeting agenda.
Thank you.
Good? Siobhan? Oh, sorry.
I mean, I could talk for days about how impressed I am with you girls and our schools and the teaching and just how lucky it is to get this for free and with such passion. And it was awesome. It was awesome to work with you. I do want to let everybody on the council know that we also pre-met with police and parks, so it was very holistic in addition to engineering. And it's so impressive. And when I go home, I don't have any comments because you answered all my pre-questions. It's a unique time because Valley's not there and traffic is less. It's a unique time because the sidewalks that I mentioned at the beginning, they're going to be in that area. And I think it's unique for you guys because in 4 years when you come back and live in Ridgewood, you're going to see this and bike it. And I'm just very grateful to you and our high school. And I found the whole thing rather impressive, and I found rather lucky to be a part of it. So thank you.
For older people, it is so annoying when people ride their bikes on the sidewalk. It's more than annoying, it's dangerous, and I really appreciate that here you're teaching the public they really belong in the street, in a bike lane, and you're providing the proof that you can't ride on the sidewalk. So I really appreciate that aspect of it, and I hope you will all be riding a bike in college.
I was completely blown away by this. First, by your desire to leave a lasting impact on your community. People have heard me say from this dais many times, many hands make light work. When people are constructive and they're trying to find a way to make our town better instead of just tearing things down, this is what I'm talking about. I would not have thought of this. I think that the location that you chose affects so many schools, so many areas. It is I didn't notice it before until you brought it out, but this is a critical artery. And I think you did a great job on that. As to your presentation, it was that rare combination in this room of comprehensive and succinct. And you did such a great job on that. You were well rehearsed. It was really one of the best presentations I've seen in this room. That being said, I do have a couple of questions. You said that you're not going to put up, you don't want any physical barriers here. And I noticed that in the pictures in Hoboken, there are physical barriers. Why no barriers? And does your research cover other countries? I think that other countries have physical barriers. We do it differently here in America, and that's always been a concern of mine. So tell me a little bit about the no barriers theme.
Well, barriers are definitely a great option. If you can have them, it's very beneficial. But from what we have researched, we don't think that the roads in Ridgewood are wide enough to also provide barriers. A lot of the roads here are even big enough to have bike lanes on both sides of the roads. So if it is possible, it would be great, but we are pretty sure that it wouldn't be wide enough to allow for 2 ways of traffic as well.
Got it. That answers my question on that. My next question, and I heard some reference made to it, was the police department brought in on this? And what was their response?
Yes, we talked to the chief of police, I think Lloyd, is his last name. And he does believe that this is a great option. He thinks that having it in the section where there are schools is also very beneficial. And as for safety, I think he's pretty keen on the fact that it will increase the safety for bikers since they won't be on the sidewalks, but they'll also have a designated spot in the road.
Got it. And my last question involves the paint. I do like this very bright green. I think that visibility is critical. Do I gather that it will look something like the color presented? That it will be that vibrant?
Yeah, we also want to make it look very similar to how the Garber Square bike lane is right now with the similar color green, just to make it like more visible for everyone to see.
Got it. And I really love the idea of continuing it through the intersections to put everyone on notice. Do you have any idea how long this paint lasts before it begins to show its wear?
I don't know the exact amount, but I know that the bike lane on Garber Square, it was painted, I think a couple years ago, maybe 10 or so years ago, and that paint is still pretty strong. It is wearing in a few areas, but I think it's something that can just be easily recoated as the weather kind of gets rid of that paint.
Got it. Thank you very much. Any other comments from the council or staff? I want to thank you so much for this. It is something that, as Evan said, I don't see anybody having any objection to this. I think that this is a great thing. I think you've done your community a great service, and I want to give you another round of applause. Thank you so much.
Well done, guys.
I'd also like to thank Miles Liu, their teacher. He has a classroom full of motivated students, and I'm sure he will again next year. They're very active in Green Ridgewood, at Earth Day, all kinds of things.
Thank you, Miles. Nice job. Really appreciate it. And let's move on.
Okay, Mayor, we have two areas on the agenda tonight with discussion items. The first grouping of discussion items will lead to a motion to suspend the work session to convene a special public meeting. We do have one item for consideration on the public meeting, so we'll discuss that now with Director Calby from Ridgewood Water. So Rich, if you want to come up, we'll discuss item 9A1, and then we'll get into the village budget items, and then we will conduct the special public meeting.
You'll have to excuse me, but unfortunately I do not have information on this item. It was presented by Mr. Rooney.
So this is the resolution to determine form, provide for issuance of sale and authorize execution of notes for PFAS treatment facilities for Ridgewood Water. So we called Rich up unprepared.
What I believe it's for is the raw water mains, because the bond closing's occurring for the iBank.
Yes.
I think it was $18.5 million.
So
Okay.
what you're going to find here is the resolution with the attached backup information. Bob has spoken to bond counsel about this. This is to enter into. This relates to the Water Bank Construction Financing Program through the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank. This would allow us to set up the bonding mechanisms that are required to undertake this initiative. I thought you were going to say that, but I'll say it. Any objection to this? And this is time sensitive, which is why it's being considered for the
Everybody
special
good?
public meeting
No
tonight.
issue.
Okay? All right. Rich, if you want to just hang out up here because you're going to be next. Okay, the next item is, has already been discussed tonight, but this is with regard to the proposed bond ordinance for additional testing and any type of response site preparation for the Shedler property. It is a bond ordinance that would appropriate the sum of $360,500, including a sum of $18,025 as the down payment. I think the most noteworthy area in the ordinance is on page 2, section 3A, where it outlines the purpose of the ordinance, and that The improvement is hereby authorized, and the purpose for the financing of which these bonds are to be issued is archaeological surveying, soil testing, site preparation, and any possible remediation related to the Shedler property, including all work and materials necessary therefore, and incidental thereto, and further, including all related costs and expenditures incidental thereto. So I think that description outlines what this has to do with.
May I just ask one question?
Sure.
I might already know the answer, but let me just ask it. Does this in any way go to the purchase or installation of artificial turf?
No.
Okay,
And-
thank you.
And you and I had a discussion earlier, Keith, and I just want to bring this point out that, wait. Never mind, I'll come back to it because I forgot. Senior moment.
So I just want to say I'm definitely for all of the testing, the archaeological survey, all that. But I am against having any more bonding of capital issues. I mean, I think where there's a will, there's a way. I believe that we can find the money to fund this elsewhere. I realize we have, as you said, we have 1.9 million allocated already for Shedler, but it's not earmarked for any of these type of things. But I do believe there is a way to use that money for this, even if it costs us a small penalty to change the, action of where we use the money, whether it was just for the field and now we're using it for testing, et cetera. I cannot, and what blows my mind is that we didn't start the budget sessions till February. That letter came out in December. So this is not like it was an unknown and it just came up. We've been talking about phase 1 and phase 2 archaeological studies for a year now. So I don't understand why this was not brought up during the budget season, and I really think we can find the money elsewhere.
So I will say that Bob and I vetted this because I anticipated this to be the conversation. I truly believe, in my professional opinion, and Bob Rooney, our CFO, agrees with this, and he's also spoke to Bud Jones about this ordinance. I believe the only other way to do this would be an emergency appropriation. And whatever that amount is, you would have to pay that in next year's budget. So you're almost guaranteeing an impact on the tax, on the projected tax rate for next year by doing it that way. Whereas here, if you bond it, if you don't spend it, it has no adverse effect on the taxpayer. So it does not. So you have a situation here where if you authorize $360,000 and we spend $50 at some future date, the balance that's unexpended can be canceled. You do not take on any debt service for money that's not expended. You don't take on any interest for money that's not expended. It's an allocation that can be expended, and if it is not, it can be canceled with no impact on the taxpayer. So that's my concern, is that if we don't pursue this tonight and there's not support amongst this council, we're going to be mandated by the DEP to do the soil testing aspect of this. And it is going to have to be declared as an emergency, and it is whatever that cost ends up being is you're going to start with that cost mandated to be implemented in 2025's budget.
Couldn't we use some of the money that's already allocated? And I believe there's like a 5% penalty if you use it for something else. Isn't that the case?
I'm not familiar with that process. I would
by
have
the way,
to
thank
talk
you
to Bob
for-
about
for
that.
bringing this up, because that was the point that I had forgotten, because I had the same question for Keith, and the key here is that if you don't spend it, you don't have to bond it.
I understand that.
This is, what we are actually doing is, we're not actually bonding tonight, we're authorizing bondage, bonding. And the, sorry about that. And the point
Another
is,
senior.
yeah, there you go. I'm having a great night tonight. So, and when you say a 5% penalty, why would we want to pay any penalty when we can have the money at the ready without any obligation to spend it? This is the financially prudent way to go forward.
Well, you only need 4 of you, and you have 4 of you, so I think,
So Keith, can I-
that's just my, I
Well,
cannot vote on it.
Here, just so you know, I have
how
no
do you-
idea what the other council
How do you know that?
members are thinking and saying. Nobody, I have not spoken to anybody
I'm not saying you
about
did.
this. Excuse me, I had a brief conversation with Pam this morning about this,
So
but that's it.
Can I ask Keith, do we have an idea? I know we always authorize more money than we think we're going to spend, so you don't have to come back to us again. Do we have an idea what this is actually going to cost?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that we have a proposal for the grid testing from Matrix, which is north of $58,000.
Right.
I had a conversation with Paul McKeon from Grubb today. I asked him for an estimate on what he thought Phase 2 would cost us for the archaeological. He was very tentative about giving me that because it's all subject to a gentleman named Vincent Maresca who works at SHPO reviewing the scope of work and telling Paul what SHPO's expectation is for the archaeological study. I did get him to admit that he could almost guarantee me that a Phase 2, based on what he knows today, is going to cost in excess of $100,000.
So we still don't really know, which goes to, I think, Paul's point and your point, that if we bond it, we only are on the hook for what we actually spend. I mean, listen, nobody hates spending money on stuff more than I do. I mean, this is my issue. This is one of the reasons I ran in the first place. But this is the fiscally correct thing to do. Again, this is one area where there's no daylight, I think, between the Shedler neighbors and everybody on this council, that if there's right now, I'm not seeing anything to cause me concern about the soil testing, but we have to be 100% safe. So everybody agrees this has to get done. I think it's, respectfully, Lorraine, I think it's very easy to say, we'll find some money elsewhere. Until you actually find the money, I don't think you could really say that. And it sounds like the fiscally prudent thing to do is to bond it, so we only have to pay for what we need to pay and not have to incur any other expenses, be in the form of a fee or paying bonding rates that are, or paying tax rates that are higher next year when we have to if we have rolled this over. I think it's the right thing to do. I don't like doing it, but it's the right thing to do.
And let me just address one question you raised in terms of how much this is going to cost. If we're looking at 58,000 and 100 to say 150,000, you're at roughly $200,000.
And Mayor, we need to back charge. We haven't gotten a bill
Right.
for Matrix for the berm. That's 38,000. So when
So-
that bill comes in, if this is appropriated and
Yeah.
adopted, we'll charge that to this as
So
well.
you're in the 2.25 range. This is 350. Here's the answer to the rest of that question. Nobody knows how much remediation, if necessary, will cost at this point. We won't know until we complete testing. And so, that's a wide open number. So, to allocate whatever, $100,000 to $150,000 for that. And then if you don't need it, or you only need a small portion of that, then that's what you use.
And to be clear, whether we build a large field, a medium-sized field, we do anything, you got to do this work.
If Shedler stays the way it is today, and the council chooses to take no action on Shedler, this soil testing is still required.
And so is the remediation, by the way.
Correct.
Whether we build any park, the park that some people want, the park that other people want, no matter what, you build no park, this has to be done.
Yeah, unless you're just looking to poke holes. Again, I don't like this, but it's the right thing to do.
Anybody else?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it's so disappointing to me that Shedler turns into the discussion of the field and the field alone. There is a $2.6 million asset there. We can't put a parking lot. We won't be able to get disabled people. Go take the tour and see how easily a wheelchair is going to get into that building. We won't be able to put a playground. We won't be able to ensure that the trees we've planted are safe. In my opinion, and I'm not casting stones, the prior council failed to address the historic elements that they put in place. Archaeological studies are really expensive. When I went to Atlantic City, I went and met them. It's a unique niche, and there's no doubt, look, it's been declared historic, but that is not advantageous to the general taxpayer. The historic declaration takes our pool of vendors to a smaller, more refined, more expensive base, and that's where we are. It's sad about Shedler, and you got to say, we're all going to vote 4 ways. That's upsetting to me, because if we don't do this, the project stalls. And what are we doing with the $7 million of taxpayer money that has been trapped for 10 years now? What are we doing with that? Where's the return on investment with the original purchase? That was $2.7 million to purchase. Talk about money. Then talk about the fact that it's removed from the tax log for 15 years, and the councils before us will not force it because it always comes down to the size of the field. We have an asset in there. We need a parking lot. We need an exit way. We need the trees that we planted to be guaranteed. We need to do this. There's just no way around it. If you don't want to vote yes to this, you want the project to stall. You do. It's just a stall. During budget season, we were told repeatedly, you can't take bonds from here and move it there. We can't do it. We would have done it. We would have moved money for Glen sidewalks.
We should have
But
talked
can't.
about this during the budget
Okay,
season.
but-
I don't understand why it's coming up now. We
So-
should have known about it.
Well, we didn't know about it. Matrix was hired for $39,000. We still don't have it. We don't even have, if for those of us who are keeping track of the money, we don't even have this new proposal. I haven't received a written new resolution for the second Matrix spend. It's been discussed, but I don't have it.
And that's
So-
because it hasn't been approved by the
Okay,
state.
so
So we're not going to
it's-
present it to you until we know what the scope
I
of
just
work
want
is.
to prove the point, because it's frustrating to me as this critical issue for us to say we should have known. We don't even have a resolution.
We did know we were going to need a Phase 1 and Phase 2 archaeological
So we
study.
have a Phase 1,
definitely knew
Phase
that.
1B, and now Phase 1B will dictate Phase 2. We also have had the criteria now that we've done an LOI. What's crazy to me is that this all should have been done when we declared the house historic. The historical part of this isn't the land, it's the house. All of this was past due. When we decided as a community, not a council, to spend $2.6 million, that comes with the burden of the archaeological dig. We're simply clearing dead wood here. That's what we're doing. When it was, how are we going to put a parking lot into that house unless we know that there's been a dig there? How are we going to do that? And this is a public safety thing. I'm totally voting yes, and I want to say a couple things on this. This project needs to keep moving forward, whether a tiny little rain garden goes in or a full-side varsity field. We have to do this. We have to do it. The town, these lingering issues make our town fight. It makes it negative for the neighbors. We're going to bring traffic in there, and we don't have a parking lot. That's a little crazy. Evan, when HPC went there, the parking is an issue. It's an issue, and it's an issue because we don't have parking inside. So we can make everything about turf, we can make everything about the fields. Okay, I'm available for that. But we're leaving all the other stuff. We're leaving a $2.6 million asset that's going to run afoul. You're all homeowners. If you don't occupy your home, your homeowner's insurance will lapse. That will happen. And we need to make sure that we're moving this project along, complying with the DEP. By voting no, you're not complying. You're not, how are we going to say, we have to test it, but we don't want to spend the money to test it? How are we going to do that?
We could find the money elsewhere.
Where, Lorraine?
I don't want to say, because then that's going to start a whole nother argument.
But our CFO, we have technical people who we rely on. The same way when the police come, I'm not going to tell Rich I know more about water. If this is a recommendation from bond counsel, our CFO, and our manager, we need to adhere to that. And I love working with you, I don't mean to be, but for you to say that of course we're going to vote for it because it's the socially responsible thing to do. We've had neighbor after neighbor expressing concern about the testing. I'm not going to deny them the testing.
I wouldn't either. We need it.
Listen,
But by voting no, you're blocking the testing.
If Bob Bruni was able to find $350,000 in our budget, I'd have some serious price issues with Bob Bruni, given how much grief we
Would be a big
gave
deal.
and how hard we were on this budget. We did not build a budget that had a lot of fat in it. We built a budget that made a lot of sense. So to say, let's go find $350,000 in there, to me, that's unthinkable. I think it's really easy to say, and again, I don't want to beat up on you, and I understand it's 4 against 1, Lorraine, and you know how much I respect the fact that you're taking a position that's counter to the rest of us, but on this one, I just can't agree with you.
We
It's
spent
so
over $1
easy.
million on lights and a shelter at Habernacle. We should have not done that.
We've
We should have
allocated,
taken-
we haven't spent. The lights are going to hopefully be offset by a grant. And part of the
Hopefully.
reason we've spent over $1 million on sidewalks too. We had a very rough budget season. We're moving things forward, but we can't take, it's not fair to the public to say, we have an earmark bond for A, B, and C. Oh, but heck, 5 years later, we're gonna switch it and spend it on F and G. It's just not the way it works. It's just not the way it works. And it makes it uncomfortable because I think it pits capital projects against each other. I've said it before, I'll say it again, it makes capital spending like the book The Hunger Games. Everyone competes, and it puts our departments at odds, and it's really an unhealthy way to look at our budget.
And Mayor, if I may, just on the technical side of this, you know, when we talked last week about having to appropriate some additional money for water pollution control, when Chris was here, because we have some challenges down there, the intention is, with the target number of $7.5 million for the 2025 capital budget, that whatever you bond heading into next year in '24 for water pollution control or for what's proposed here tonight will come off of that 7.5. So we're not gonna, these aren't gonna be standalones. This is going to be essentially credited, for lack of a better description, to the 2025 capital when we make our proposal to you, late next winter. So there's not any additional debt service than we would normally take on, which is that target $7.5 million number.
Listen, bottom line, this has to get done, and nobody's actually said any reasonably prudent way of paying it otherwise for this project. Again, I don't know how you can really be opposed to voting yes on this tonight.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with the 5% penalty. I can tell you that, the 5% when it comes to bond ordinances is the down payment that needs to be taken from the budget. That's not part of the debt service piece. That's what I'm familiar with. My concern is that whatever this soil endeavor costs, if this bond ordinance isn't adopted, I think the only mechanism to do it is through an emergency appropriation, and whatever that dollar amount is that goes to the emergency will immediately start in the hole in the 2025 budget. And I think we've done some really good work trying to get the budget into a healthier position than where you were in 2023, and I think that that's going to put us behind the 8 ball before we even turn the page on the calendar.
Yeah, I don't think that there is a 5% penalty. I'm really not certain of it. Yeah, I think it's what Keith said, because otherwise we could take, the money that we have voted on and say, well, we're not going to buy trucks with it. We're going to do something else with it.
I know it's been discussed.
And so I don't believe that's something we can do. And the fact that our bond counsel, by the way, bond counsel people, when I was practicing law, the bond counsel people were like, I was here and they were here. Really smart people. And if they say that this is the way to go, I really can't see going against their advice. So let's move on. Anybody else? Good? Okay. Next.
Okay, moving forward, we have the award of contract for the emergency repair of the water pollution control sludge boiler. This is the result of an inspection that occurred of the sludge heating boiler. There are digesters at the plant. There's a number of repairs that need to be identified and repaired immediately. Chris reached out to CJ Vanderbeck and Son for assistance. They provided a not-to-exceed number of $16,625, and this is going to be covered by capital improvement money. Any issues there?
Everybody good?
Why does sludge have to be heated?
What's that?
Why does sludge have to be heated?
It tastes better.
All
I can get you an answer on the science, but I'm not going to lie. I don't have it up here.
right.
All
So
right.
it flows, okay, all
There you
right,
go.
that makes sense, and also there's a typo in the resolution.
Our next issue is an emergency purchase for the battery backup system for our IT department. This is a quote of $43,704 from SHI for the purchase of these battery backup systems. This has become critical. Believe it or not, from the end of March through the beginning of April, both the Village and Ridgewood Water have experienced 6 outages over a 3-week period. This has impacted our third-party infrastructure where we've had failures. We've met as a management team with Dylan Hansen on this. Rich is shaking his head yes, because This has affected the SCADA system over at Water, and I know he has concerns about this. But we've determined that the purchase of these battery backup systems is an emergency situation in light of these frequent power outages that we've been experiencing. Any questions or comments on that?
All good.
Okay, next is the award of contract for the repair of the fire alarm at the wastewater treatment plant. We have a low bid for $58,079.57. This is from a prior approved bond ordinance in the capital budget. The low quote is Open System Integrators. They were the low quote, and Chris is recommending this award so that we can get this done and we can get our fire system fully operational at Water Pollution Control.
Plus the 7,400.
Yes, I'm sorry.
For
Well, the
inspection and certification.
yes, so you have that on top of it, so it's a total of $65,503.57.
Yep.
Okay,
go.
and then the final item for the special public meeting is the Voice over IP Networks maintenance contract with ProCare Maintenance Services for support of the village phone system. The total on that is $18,582. Any
Good.
questions on any of those?
Nope.
Okay, then we can move to Eileen to suspend the regular order of business.
May I have a motion to
So
suspend the work session?
So
and
moved.
convene- Second?
Second.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Perrin,
Yes.
Councilmember Reynolds,
Yes, sorry.
Councilmember Whites.
Yes.
And Councilmember Winograd,
Yes.
and Mayor Vagianos.
Yes. And so, this is the Village Council special public meeting. The date is May 22nd, 2024. The time is 9:15 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled the same as provided by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
And Deputy Mayor Perrin,
Yeah, here.
Councilmember Reynolds,
Here.
Councilmember Whites.
Here.
Councilmember Winograd,
Here.
and Mayor Vagianos.
Here. And I move the first reading of ordinance 4005.
Second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
So I'm voting no on this. Do I say yes just to introduce it?
This is just for the reading.
Okay, yes.
Whites,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes, so ordered. Will the clerk please read ordinance 4005 by title?
Bond ordinance providing for archaeological surveying, soil testing, site preparation, and remediation related to Shedler property in and by the Village of Ridgewood in the County of Bergen, New Jersey, appropriating $360,500 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $342,475 bonds or notes of the village to finance part of the cost thereof.
I move that ordinance 4005 be adopted on the first reading and that June 5th, 2024 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
I second the motion.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Whites,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
Vagianos.
Yes.
I second the motion. I already said that.
Yep, you're good.
Yeah.
The following resolution numbered 24-178 will be adopted by a consent agenda with one vote by the Village Council. There is a brief description beside the resolution to be considered on the consent agenda. The resolution will be read by title only. 24-178, determine form, provide for issuance of sale and authorize execution of notes for PFAS treatment facilities for Ridgewood Water.
So moved.
Second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Whites,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
Vagianos.
Yes.
The following resolutions numbered 24-179 through 24-182 will be adopted by a consent agenda with one vote by the Village Council. There is a brief description besides each resolution to be considered on the consent agenda. The resolutions will be read by title only. 24-179, award contract emergency repair of sludge heating boiler, water pollution control facility, not to exceed $16,200 24-180, award contract under state contract battery backup system not to exceed $43,704. 24-181, award contract under Educational Services Commission of New Jersey Cooperative Purchasing Program, repair of fire alarm system, and 2024 NJFPA fire alarm inspection services at Water Pollution Control Facility, not to exceed $65,503.57. 24-182, award contract under Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Program, ProCare Maintenance Contract for phone system not to exceed $18,582.
So moved.
Second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Whites,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes.
May I have a motion to adjourn the special public meeting and reconvene the work session?
So moved.
Second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Whites,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes.
Okay,
Let's
moving
get
on.
back to our regular agenda.
Moving on to item 13, which is discussion of 5 items with Ridgewood Water. Rich has papers in front of him, so we're good to go this time.
These I have. Thank you. Apologize for that earlier. So with me tonight is Alex Karoloki, and Alex is our system analyst for Ridgewood Water. He worked closely with me on item 13A3, so I want him to be here in case there are any questions specifically on that item he could assist. The first item tonight is a recommendation for the annual contract with Valley Medical Group. This is for the drug and alcohol testing that's federally mandated as part of our commercial driver's licensing program. It includes both the random testing and any testing directed due to reasonable suspicion or post-accident. And it also includes all the pre-employment physicals and testing that are done for any new employees. It's an annual agreement that we've had in place even before I began here in 2015. It has a not-to-exceed value of $12,500, and that is spread across various operating accounts, both the water and the Village of Ridgewood.
Yeah, so while Rich spearheads this effort on behalf of Ridgewood Water and the village, this is applicable to departments across the village operations.
Yes. Any questions?
Everybody good?
Yep.
Next item is our annual renewal of our GIS software. GIS is Geographic Information Systems. This is a software utilized by both the Village of Ridgewood and Ridgewood Water specifically for maintenance of our assets. It's an intelligent map that both visually represents the systems that Ridgewood Water operates throughout 4 towns, but also the village uses to maintain assets such as stormwater, sewers, sanitary sewers, manholes, trees, and many other things. You could pretty much go to infinity and beyond when it comes to monitoring these assets in the system. As part of having the software, we're required to pay an annual maintenance fee to the vendor, ESRI. So there's a recommendation for the final year of a 3-year contract, which will go through July of 2025. It's an annual cost of $27,000, split evenly between the village and Ridgewood Water. Funding for this is in the operating accounts for both Ridgewood Water and the village.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Rich, did you just quote a line from Toy Story, to infinity and beyond?
I did.
I think you did.
Yes, thank you.
And we're going to support this anyway.
I did just want to say, from the shade tree perspective and the tree inventory, this software has been incredibly valuable to us, and it's going to help us as a council budget. And I want to thank you guys, but also Neil Gallone, who did such a good job at
Yes.
explaining it to us.
Alex
And-
is one of the team members on that,
Oh, it
that
is so
group also.
impressive. We can talk after.
And Mayor, we're also looking to expand that. We recently had a meeting with Wyckoff about them being able to enter into a potential shared services agreement for GIS services that Ridgewood Water might be able to offer Wyckoff. So we're talking that through, but this has a lot of potential for growth.
It sounds great. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. Our next item is a recommendation for a water professional services contract for hydraulic modeling. Ridgewood Water has maintained the hydraulic model of our system for many years. The model needs updating, specifically relative to the centralization that's occurring as part of our PFAS build-out, specifically to examine what changes we're going to make in operations to make sure we're effective in operating the system, and also to evaluate how we're going to handle such things as disinfection residuals with the new laws that are coming forward, which are requiring an increase in our disinfection throughout the system, and with movement of water in the directions that the water will flow with the changes that are going to occur. I happened to attend the annual water conference this March down in Atlantic City, attended a presentation by this firm, Circular Water Solutions. I was very impressed. After that, brought the topic to the team. Both Alex and I have been participating in multiple conversations with the principal of the firm, which is Dr. Zhao. She's a professional engineer licensed in the state of New Jersey, and her profession is solely hydraulic modeling for water systems. So in front of you, I have a proposal that we're recommending approval for this professional service. It outlines the specific services, and it's a not to exceed of $85,000, and this funding is available in the Rigid Water operating budget.
Questions, anyone? All good? Let's go.
Next item is bulk water purchase with the Borough of Hawthorne. This agreement has been in existence since 2001. It renews on an annual basis. It was temporarily suspended in 2021 because at that time we identified that the Borough of Hawthorne had significant levels of PFAS in the water because they're also a groundwater system similar to Ridgewood Water and the Village of Ridgewood. At that time, Hawthorne allowed us to suspend it. At this time, based on what Mr. Kazmark highlighted earlier, the treatment is complete. So we're looking to purchase and continue with this annual agreement at least for the next 2 years, 24 and 25. We're asking for tonight is just the extension for 24. This will allow us to purchase mainly in the peak season. It's usually June through August, sometimes extends into September, and then we shut it down for the winter because it doesn't have the capability, this interconnection of running during the cold weather. It's an outdoor interconnection. So again, it's PFAS-free water. Out of the 3 interconnections we have, it's the one that has non-detect. So I strongly recommend approval of this for this season, 2024. The current price is $4.12 per 1,000 gallons that will be purchased, and it's budgeted for in the water operating budget.
Questions, anyone? I just want to highlight in your memo what you've said and what Keith said, but bears repeating yet once again. At this time, the Borough of Hawthorne has completed installation of treatment and is now distributing water that is below the DEP and EPA maximum contaminant levels for regulated PFAS compounds. And that's
Correct.
why we're entering into it. So,
And I assume that this water meets all the other standards for any other contaminants and lead and...
They have to meet all the same rules that
Yeah.
we have to follow for safe drinking water.
let's go.
All right, thank you. I believe the last item is professional services change order number 2 for raw water mains. The firm of Mott McDonald was hired to do all the designs of the raw water mains for the PFAS centralization that were the topic of the bond resolution you passed tonight. In the course of doing that work, we originally had planned to do all these projects at once. At one time, it was considered to be one project bid, but due to timing, delays associated with permits, and other things that have gotten in the way of doing what was planned, and now all the projects are going to be separated into individual bids, so there's a cost to doing that. It's more specified in the detailed in the Mott McDonald proposal, but I'm recommending this change order to Mott McDonald in the amount of $60,030, and this is funded in the water capital budget.
Questions, anybody? All good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you both.
Okay, we have nothing under parking this evening, so we will move on to budget. We have a recommendation for award of contract for the replacement of underground fuel storage tanks and fuel system at the Fleet Services Division. This is a project that has been a long time coming. It is not an emergency, but it is of an urgent nature. We had 5 plan holders pick up bid specifications in order to bid. 3 of those plan holders returned bids on Wednesday, May 8th. The bids ranged from on the low end of $769,299 to the high of $1,069,075. Low bid is Betts Environmental Service of Butler, New Jersey, with the quote of $769,299. This has been funded through 2 different capital ordinances, 3996 and 3854. There's a total of just over $990,000 available in these 2 accounts, and the bid award will be for the aforesaid amount. The current fuel tanks are approximately 3 years past their life expectancy, and we do expect there to be significant efficiency in replacing this equipment operationally at the Fleet Division. Any issues?
I did speak to Chris about this, and the ones to be taken out are about 33 years old, and the ones to be put in, he anticipates will have a 30-year life expectancy as well.
That's correct. All right.
Good.
Item 2 is a memorandum from the Ridgewood Police Department. This one should make Councilmember Reynolds very happy. This is the replacement purchase of the police patrol motorcycle. It will enhance the patrol functions at the Ridgewood Police Department. Source of funding for this is monies recouped from the loss of the previous Ridgewood motorcycle back during Hurricane Ida. This will improve the visibility of the department, improve community relations, and supplement the department fleet. This is a not-to-exceed expenditure of $18,900.
And Paul will be riding it in the 4th of July parade.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
No, I will. I did speak to Chief Lyons about this, and I asked whether an EV version exists. It does. However, it does not accept police lights or sirens. And this is so gas efficient in and of itself, I'm not going to insist on an EV version.
We
Anybody
did
else?
take delivery of the EV pickup truck, though, Deputy Mayor. So Sean's excited that that's been mobilized in the fleet. Next item, 13C3, is also from the Ridgewood Police Department. This is the continuation request for resolution for Mobizent Ticket Works. This is our e-ticketing hardware and software provider. The monthly lease fee for Ticket Works the application is a $50 license. We currently possess 26 mobile licenses at a cost of $19,500 for a 15-month billing cycle. So the ask to continue this contract for 15 months is $19,500. Any questions?
Good.
Okay. Next item is award of contract for a vehicle purchase in the Parks Department. This is for a 2024 Ford F-350 Super Cab. This is going to be purchased through state contract through Route 23 Auto Mall, also in Butler, ironically. This is a new vehicle replacing Parks Vehicle 120 that has been taken out of service due to extensive repair costs. Purchase of the vehicle is $60,175. With the plow and accessories, the total cost is $75,703.30. This will be taken out of the 2024 capital budget, which was previously approved.
Let's go.
Okay, next item is also from the Parks Department. This is the purchase of a lift gate for the F-350 Super Cab and back rack. The purchase of the equipment requires the lift gate. Total cost is $7,041. This will come out of a capital account, and it will be purchased off the New Jersey State Co-op.
What does a lift gate do?
If you have heavy equipment, it lowers it down so you can place it on, bring it up to get it in the back of the truck.
Gotcha.
Okay. Next item is also from Parks. Hold on, did I not move? Also from Parks, and this is the purchase of a snowplow for the F-350 Super Cab back rack. This is total amount to purchase the plow from Sourcewell is $8,491.30, and this again was authorized in the capital budget.
Everybody good?
Next item is from Sanitation and Recycling from Sean Hanlon. This is the continuation of the rental contract for the Sanitation Department for the the collection trucks. We're extending this from the initial term to a 13-month agreement. This is under the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Program, and this will extend the contract from May of '24 to June of '25, and then we will be able to get new trucks upon the termination of the lease.
Questions?
Okay.
Anybody? Good.
Okay, next item is also from Sanitation and Recycling. This is for the Recycling Division to purchase one new 2026 Leach model 2R3 29 cubic yard rear loader to be mounted to the Kenilworth dual steer cab. This is going to be provided by Gabrielli Kenworth of Northern New Jersey. This will replace truck 259 in their fleet. It's going to come off the Sourcewell contract, not to exceed $385,000, again, attributed to the capital budget.
Let's go.
Can you tell I told all the department directors that they had to start spending their money so we could replenish the fleets here?
Great.
Next item is from Chris Rudishauser. This has to do with a purchase off the National Cooperative Purchase Agreement for Sourcewell, Class 4 through 8 chassis with related equipment, accessories, and services. Truck chassis for the hook truck. This is a purchase of a new hook lift multi-function truck. This is going to be used for hauling material, soil, ground yard waste, snow removal. It'll also be used for salting and ice and snow service in the winter months, and we'll be able to plow snow during major events. Truck replaces a previously surplused and disposed of international dump truck. This was allocated in the 2024 capital budget for the amount of $343,824.
Let's go.
Thank you. Next item is from the Health Department. This is the continuation of our contract with our social worker. We have worked not only with the Health Department, but also with the Police and Building Department. There's a need for social workers in various support situations. Stephanie McTeague has been doing an outstanding job. She's been a licensed social worker since 2022. This is a professional contract. It was previously funded through the grants post-COVID. However, now that the state of New Jersey has reduced the amount of grant funding that we are receiving, we budgeted for this in the 2024 budget in the amount of $18,000 to pay for this. Her service contract is for $75 per hour for a maximum of 240 hours from July 1st, 24 through December 31st, 24, and Dawn is already exploring additional grant opportunities to continue this service in 2025.
All set.
Okay, and last is under operations. This is a housekeeping item, but we have long had an agreement with the County of Bergen for snow plowing. This new agreement will cover 2024 through 2026. The agreement covers the Village Streets Division snow plowing Bergen County roads in the village at the same time as we plow the village streets during a snow event. The agreement, again, is for a 2-year period, and the county reimburses us a rate of $115 per hour as detailed in the agreement.
There's a
Keith,
typo.
do you know what the rate was previously?
I don't, but I can ask.
Okay.
There's a typo. I'm going to give it to Eileen.
Thanks, everybody. Anybody have anything else?
No.
No? Let's go back to public comment.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council, Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. There was some discussion on the dais earlier this evening about water restrictions and watering, people who are not watering in accordance with the prescribed regulations. I was very surprised that Deputy Mayor Perrin did not mention these smart controllers. The people who have the smart controllers have a whole different thing that they can do or can't do, and I would appreciate somebody clarifying that. I personally am against what they are allowed to do, but I fought that battle and lost, so I won't say anything more about it other than I would appreciate what the smart controller equipped people can do and can't do in relation to watering. Also, with respect to the enforcement, I believe that there are some people who put in the smart controllers but are not renewing it on an annual basis as they're supposed to. So I'm hoping that as a part of the enforcement process, we go around and find out those people who have the smart controllers but who have not renewed their annual permit for them, because if they don't renew their annual permit, I believe that they're in violation if they continue to use them in accordance with what is prescribed. So again, some enforcement on those people who have the smart controllers but haven't renewed their permit, and also a clarification on what they are allowed and not allowed to do. The other thing I'd like to comment on this evening is a comment that was made by Councilperson Winograd. She indicated or said that the $2.6 million purchase price for the Shedler property, that taxpayer money is trapped. That was the phrase she used. It is my opinion that that money is not trapped. The purchase of the property, although you haven't been able to build the field that you'd like to build yet, that property is currently serving a wonderful purpose, and that it is providing a buffer for the people who live in the neighborhood. It prevented commercial development of the property, and it prevented residential development of the property. So in my opinion, the money is not trapped. It's serving a purpose. You haven't built your field yet. We'll get to that, maybe, but right now the property is serving a great purpose. It is a buffer, and it prevented residential development, which may have overburdened our school systems, and it prevented commercial development, which basically looks like crap. Thank you.
Thank you, Boyd.
Jacqueline Hone, 30 Carriage Lane. I had run over here to look at the yellow binder for the details related to the bond, because none of that was provided to the public. There's nothing on the website. There's no details other than what was on the agenda, a very small, very reduced couple lines of what's going to be on the special meeting agenda. So if we can improve that communication moving forward, the details, I know that Village Manager Keith Kasmark had posted onto Facebook like a screenshot of a little bit of the details, but the public didn't have that, and I didn't expect him to continuously go back and forth with people on social media. So if we could just have those documents readily available so that I don't have to run over here and go to the, not just me, for the binder. But I ended up staying for the same reason that Boyd just said, which was Ms. Winograd's comment. I'd like to make a comment on that as well. That $7 million asset sitting there trapped with no return on investment is actually, in its natural state, it is a park. It hasn't been sitting there stalled. As a matter of fact, have you heard of Dunham Trail, Maple Park, Kings Pond, Gypsy Pond, Grove Park, Habernickel Park, Twinney Park, North Road Park, Pleasant Park? They're all wildscapes. Wild areas for birding, picnics, walks, experience flora, fauna, and in each way, it's so that the public gets a better understanding of open space. Referring to the trees and this open space, this multi-million wildscape park as Deadwood is an insult to all green efforts and open space conservation throughout Ridgewood and state. So I just ask, please, that when statements are made from the dais about this money, because it's been repeated over and over again, that this is a park to many of us, and it is clearly defined as such through all the grant money and funding that has gone to the park from the state, Bergen County, and the taxpayers. Again, in its natural state, this is a park, and it is providing a substantial passive and active return to the public. The idea that Shedler is nothing unless it's developed is unfair and downright hypocritical to all the efforts that we've done to preserve and conserve open space and green acres. So whether something is done or not doesn't define whether it is a park or not. It already is a park. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Cynthia O'Keefe, 542 West Saddle River Road. Good evening. I had asked a number of times if a traffic study could be conducted. And I noticed, this evening we talked about safety a number of times. And Christina brought up a very good point about the house being open to the public on the 8th of June. That being said, I remember when Keith, maybe it was early in his days here, had mentioned that if I wanted a traffic study or the neighborhood wanted one, that I could work directly with Chief Lyons. So that's exactly what I've done. I got in touch with, actually I met them here one night, it was Chief Judge and Chief Lyons, spoke to them, and they both agreed this couldn't have been a better idea. Knowing how, narrow West Saddle River Road is, they were both eager to, to talk and have additional conversations. While we haven't had that opportunity yet, they are putting this into the hands of the traffic safety coordinator for Ridgewood. I'm not sure if the people in this room are aware, but the police and the fire department certainly are. There was an 8-year-old boy on May 9th who got out of his home. He's nonverbal. He ran down his street. I don't want to mention it for his family's privacy, but he ran down his street at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Police were already on West Saddle. He ran down West Saddle River Road and onto Route 17. The police were able to catch him before he got hit by a car. We cannot invite, traffic nightmares into our neighborhood, so we need to do something about this if we are going to have parking on the street or bump outs or whatever. It's very hard to tell from the plan what has been, what's proposed, what's solidified in your minds. But that being said, and nobody's come over and walked us through these details, I think it would be helpful at some point, once we do get these conversations underway. This is very serious. And not only will this start, this will continue in this neighborhood. This isn't something like, oh, the park is built, bye-bye, and you're never gonna hear from the Shedler neighbors. We are gonna be on this project every day, following every aspect of it, whether it's traffic or anything else. And Keith has made a joke, I guess it's like my full-time job. It's not really, because I do have a full-time job. And I don't spend as much time on it as you think. But that being said, we are going to make this a priority, and safety is key. If we've already had 2 children hit by cars, you all know that because I've said it many times. We can't, take this casually. I believe the RBSA person, I don't know his name, said something about hundreds of people coming if there's a field built. I don't know if that, if we've never done a stress test, if that's even a possibility, but it scares me, and we shouldn't live in fear in our own neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. A couple of comments about tonight. I still totally don't understand the numbers that were said about this $350,000 bond. I heard $58,000, I heard $100,000, and then I heard another $38,000 that will have to be paid back for the berm. By my math, that leaves $154,000 to add it up to $350. So I don't understand that. I feel like numbers are just being thrown around and we're borrowing some randomly enormous amount of money. It makes no sense to me. I would like to thank Councilwoman Reynolds for pointing out what we all know, that it was not a surprise about the archaeologic studies that had to be done. It was not a surprise that the dirt had to be tested. We have known this, and you knew this when you did the budget. You knew this when you did the budget, and you allocated money on other wants, not needs. Testing this soil is a need, and now we're going to have to borrow more money in order to do that. A pavilion at Habernickel is a want. The $700,000 lighting out back here is a want. You knew that the soil was going to have to be tested. You knew it when you did the budget, as Councilwoman Reynolds so clearly said. So it is insulting to say that this came as a big surprise. Councilwoman Winograd mentioned tonight that the cost of planting a tree is $1,100 per tree.
In the
How
Central
ma-
Business District.
Okay, I guess, if, for those of you that couldn't hear, she said that's in the Central Business District. Apparently, it costs more in the Central Business District. But how many trees are going to be slated to be killed at Shedler if it's 1,100 or so to plant the new one? I'm also like to say that I'm sick and tired of hearing the term non-native regarding trees. It's borderline racist to me. There are trees that are absolutely flourishing here, as Ellie Gruber said earlier this evening. You know, we're all non-native, except for, well, my husband's grandfather was American Indian, so I guess he's partly native, but the rest of us are all pretty much non-native. We all belong here. And if trees are flourishing at Shedler, as they are, because I go there often to that asset of ours and walk my dog, trees are flourishing there, it's wrong to say that they're non-native. They're happy, okay? Just like all of us whose ancestors came here, we're happy here for the most part. One last thing. The acoustics in this room are interesting because apparently the village manager can hear if I make a sotto voce comment to my husband. He hears it. But we in the back can't always hear you guys in the front. Councilman Whites in particular, please try to remember to put your face near the mic. I know the mayor's very, very good about reminding people about that. We can't hear. Ellie said she went home because she can't hear here. She can hear better at home. But I think, Councilman Whites, and I will have to go home and listen, I think I heard you refer to some of the people who have an interest in Shedler as being extremists. You may not have said that. I would have to re-listen because I couldn't hear it clearly. I hope you didn't say that.
Hopefully this is loud enough. I definitely never referred to them as extremists. I disagree with some of them, but they're not extreme.
Good, thank you. Glad-
Thank you, Ann. And we have several people on hybrid access. And first is Anna. You're up.
Hi, good evening. I'm calling in. I am somebody who's actively working to stop artificial turf in my town, and I know that you are.
Anna?
Yes, hello?
Your name and address, please? I mean, your address?
Yes. Hi. I'm Anna Grossman, 63 Essex Avenue, Montclair.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
calling
You said
in
it,
and-
excuse me, Anna, forgive me. You said it so quickly, I didn't hear it. Could you say it a little more slowly?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. It's Anna Grossman, and I'm calling from 63 Essex, Montclair.
Montclair, thank you.
Yes, hi. So I'm calling about the fact that you are considering artificial turf. And I just wanted to mention a couple of things. First of all, please explore natural grass options. There's this really wonderful guy, I think his name is Keith Fisher, and he handles a really large school district where they only have grass natural fields and they have tremendous sports. And he really is happy to talk to anybody, and he will prove to you that you don't need artificial turf. You can save yourself the headache of all these meetings and people, whether you call them extremists or not, who are trying to show you good science that you're probably skeptical of, maybe ignoring. But let me tell you, I get Google alerts every morning on PFAS and artificial turf articles, and you should sign up for those. And that way, you can easily understand what we are seeing as advocates who are trying to prevent further PFAS pollution, which you yourselves are trying to clean up from your water systems. Now, obviously, you can only filter out what you're filtering out for, and there's thousands of PFAS. And it's a huge, huge problem. There was a wonderful article in The New Yorker about a woman's journey in discovering PFAS at 3M and being suppressed. You should read it. She talks about lab studies in which all the rats died. Please don't make children rats. We know too much about PFAS. You're even trying to remove it from the water. You don't need to add more to the environment when perfectly good grass exists. Please keep the garden in the garden state. You can do this. Just pick the right choice and not plastic carpet for our universe. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Anna. Rurik, you're next. Rurik, you're still on mute. Still on mute. There you go.
Rurik Halaby. You hear me now?
We can.
Good, good. Rurik Halaby, 1 Franklin Avenue, Ridgewood. First, I want to thank and congratulate Keith Kasmark for finally getting something done as far as fixing the streets in Ridgewood. I mean, you had the county roads were repaved, and now the tree streets are being repaved. And believe me, for years, I used to describe Ridgewood as looking third world, if you will. It was just terrible, terrible streets. But finally, they're getting done. Secondly, as far as Shedler, I'm not sure what to say or what to do, but to compare Shedler with the Dunham Trail or the Gypsy Pond, etc. I only have one word I can use to describe Shedler, and it's a word I've been using for 6, 7, 8 years, and I have been active solo on my own for years and years, and none of the people who are now talking were ever there to talk about Shedler. But in any case, Siobhan, I think you may have not used the right word. The right word to use about Shedler as it stands right now, it is a dump, period. It is a dump, and it has to be improved. It is not a wildscape. It's nothing to be proud of. Frankly, if I lived in the Shedler neighborhood, I'd be upset as heck at the state of Shedler. You can't walk on it. You can't do anything with it. It's just a horrible, horrible piece of property. So anyway, keep up the good work. You're doing a great job trying to correct for some big, big mistakes that were done under the previous administration. And I know you'll succeed. And yet again, thank you to Keith Kasmark for repaving the streets of Ridgewood. Thank you.
Thank you, Rurik. Susan, you're up. You're on, oh, there you go.
Yeah, hi. Susan Ruan, 705 Kingsbridge Lane. I want to begin by to say thank you for the update on the Kingsbridge Lane or Kingsbridge footbridge. And I was wondering if there was any update on if any awards have been accepted to repaving West Saddle River Road. And then I want to piggyback off of what Cynthia said about the child who wandered in our neighborhood on May 9th. Thankfully, the police found him and he was safe. You know, and I also want to, and I attended the Access Ridgewood meeting, and I want to thank Access Ridgewood as well as the first responders for their incentives on educating themselves as well as the community to this about the special needs. I just want to say, I know that the meeting has been occurring. There was a second child tonight that wandered out of his house. He was in, he was last seen on Glen and Oak. Thankfully, the police found him. He was a 9-year-old, nonverbal autistic child. And I know when I went to the Access Ridgewood meeting, I had asked to do some sort of workshop just to educate the public, educate families that there's no stigma to this. It happens. I have an autistic son. He never wandered, but that is it's a very crucial thing that needs to be addressed. And on Facebook, there's many people that said, oh, my kid also does this. My kid also does this. And again, just to help parents, help the community, help the police, because it is, you know, it is a concern. Thankfully, both children have been found and returned home safely, but it is something that we don't want a child like that to wander or to get hurt. And lastly is in regards to the Shedler property. And I know I spoke about this before. It's a little bit very concerning that there's such a contamination at the Shedler property and there has to be more testing. I'm concerned about the runoff heading down to Saddle River and how that is being affected. And is there going to be any testing to figure that out? And it's just, you know, you hear about nitrates running off on cornfields and stuff that go into the stream and how it affects wildlife and people. Again, with the contamination at Shedler, how does that affect other things? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Christina, you're up.
Christina Million, 530 West Saddle River Road. I just wanted to comment on the cost of the soil testing and just gently remind everyone like why we're here and why we have to do it. And it's because soil was dumped on historic land, both illegally at night by individuals outside of our town and supposedly by town employees. And as far as the town is concerned, the majority of the sites that the soil was taken from, which were listed in the NJDEP letter in December, do not seem to have soil permits. So we also know, thanks to the NJDEP letter, that the soil that was dumped at Shedler far exceeds what was needed to build the berm. And for the record, current residents have no answers as to why that was allowed to happen, or if previous councils were aware that this was even happening, or if this was simply just a rogue employee. And it's already been confirmed that no internal investigation is happening by this current council as to who is responsible for this dumping, why permits weren't obtained, and so forth. And so residents will just have to accept that no one wants to get to the ground truth on that. But we are thankful that the NJDEP is involved to help us get data and facts. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. And I think that does it for public comment. And any responses?
I have a few, Mayor.
I had a feeling.
If I may go in reverse order to Ms. Millian. First of all, let me say that I do not believe in what I have reviewed, and I have spent some time going through old correspondence that has been provided to me by the IT department, that in any way, shape, or form we had the definition of a rogue employee. And I will so much say tonight that that is not the first time that that terminology has been used. I think it is untrue, and I think it's borderline harassment to the employee that you're referencing. I am here to, and I say it all the time, and sometimes I get mocked for using this phrase, but I am here to call balls and strikes, and I'm telling you right now that the employee that you're referencing is the one who alerted the Ridgewood Police Department to illegal dumping on that property. It's documented in police records, and it's documented in emails that the village has on file. So I would really strongly recommend that references such as that you refrain from saying those at future council meetings. I will also say that in what I have read, I am not completely convinced that prior council members were not aware of the circumstances of accepting the free soil. I don't have a comprehensive report to provide in that regard at this point, but at a very surface level, I am not convinced of that fact. So I just want to say that in response to those remarks. To Ms. Ruan, very pleased that the footbridge project will be out to bid in the month of June. I have responded multiple times to Ms. Ruan with regard to West Saddle River Road. I have committed publicly on social media and in email that West Saddle River Road will be paved in 2024. There is funding for it. However, we are in the process of finalizing the totality of our 2024 road program, but the commitment is made that West Saddle River is included. With regard to Ms. Loving, I don't believe that the numbers are all over the place. I believe that the ordinance is very explicit in what it is meant to do, which is to cover these costs with regard to soil testing, which right now we have a $38,000 bill for work that's already been done. We have a $58,000 proposal that is being reviewed by the DEP. I can't guarantee that that will be the final number. It could very well increase depending on the scope of work that's determined to be undertaken by the DEP. That also applies to the archaeological piece in light of the fact that the Phase 2 scope of work needs to be reviewed by SHPO, and we don't know what the total cost will be relative to that proposal. But it also speaks, and I pride myself on trying to be prepared for what's coming. We didn't expect that soil letter in December, but we need to be prepared for what may come. And if there is any type of remediation that is required, and we don't know that answer as we sit here tonight on May the 22nd, we need to be prepared to mobilize in order to react to anything that the DEP directs us to do. So, I would call this prudent planning rather than drawing numbers out of the air. The other thing I'll tell you is that when I took my physical to take this job, the one portion of the physical that I failed was the hearing test. And my kids were with me, and they've mocked me ever since. So with respect, my hearing is not that great, but I heard you loud and clear. With regard to Ms. O'Keefe, I did have a conversation with Chief Lyons and Chief Judge after you had the opportunity to meet with them. The police chief does have the traffic division looking at West Saddle River. I actually had an extensive conversation with him just yesterday about the concept of the bump-in parking that's in the concept plan that was sent to SHPO for the development of Shedler Park. He is very supportive of the bump-in parking because it would take people who park on West Saddle River Road off of the road that exists today. They would be able to essentially park off the directional lanes on West Saddle River Road. He believes that'll make for a safer environment, and that's something that he's discussing with the traffic division as we speak. I think that's all I have, Mayor.
Just before, because I know you have a bunch of notes, and the one thing that I took issue with was, and I may be wrong, my hearing's pretty good, I didn't hear Evan ever use the term extremist. And perhaps he did, and I'm sure that you can verify it on the tape, but I didn't hear it. So and I would be surprised because it's not the way he generally speaks. So in any event, that's all I really wanted to say. So go ahead.
As to the regulations with regard to smart controllers and watering, smart controllers are allowed to water between 3 and 7 a.m., and Lorraine said that accurately. I didn't think I needed to reiterate it.
No,
but-
well, I think if any underground sprinkler can be 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. on your day when you're allowed. If you have a smart controller
Right.
and it's registered with the Ridgewood Water Department each year, then the smart controller is allowed to go off every night if it's necessary. But still, the hours are always 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. The smart controller is supposed to know when your lawn needs water and go off, So if we're in a drought, it might go off 4 nights a week. It might go out, go off more.
The regulations are clearly stated on the Ridgewood Water website.
If I can just,
Can I just say that, because I'm going to make a joke with Lorraine? Sounds like social media post. Lorraine had her first social media flyer for Project Pride with the seal and all. It seems like simple information that I'd be willing to help encapsulate and get out on social and create an awareness for those who don't have smart controllers. They may want to invest in them. So if you send that to me, maybe we could do that. The timing's right. And I might hashtag Lorraine's second social media flyer. Here we go.
so just, if I can just, 2 quick things. So going back to some of the other points before. So, I mean, on the notion that, we were aware that somehow we purposely didn't budget for soil testing because we were aware of it. I mean, listen, 20/20 hindsight, certainly my friends in the Shedler neighborhood, I know Lorraine, you've been all over this issue. If this was so well known that we had to do this testing, why did not come up during the budget hearings, which were extensive and long with lots of public comment? So I do respectfully disagree with folks that are somehow insinuating that we, didn't fund this and we knew we had to fund it. None of us knew that the extent of what had to be funded, otherwise we would have. And again, I stand by my vote tonight to fund it now. I also want to address some of the criticisms that went towards, my colleague Siobhan. I mean, I agree in principle with her. The property was bought, 15 years ago, to put a field there for the betterment of the village. We spent $2.6 million at a house, which not only do we not have a use for it, even if we had a use for it, we couldn't use because there's no parking there. Anybody who thinks the status quo is acceptable with what's going on there, the amount of money we've spent and the state of the property, the state of what the property is in now, I cannot agree with that. And I agree very much in principle with what Siobhan said. The status quo is not acceptable. As I've said before, the money was well spent to avoid that property becoming a strip mall. That's absolutely the right decision. But if you go there now, some people would have you think that this was, just this beautiful landscape. Go look at it. It's not that nice. It needs to be fixed, and the Village of Ridgewood needs to get a return on what they invested money in there, which is to have a public space for us all, which is not what it's being used for now. The budget for it has been bloated, it's been mishandled, and I agree with Siobhan. Something has to be done there, and anyone who suggests somehow that the status quo is acceptable, I just can't respectfully agree with them. And finally, again, I don't believe I use the word extremist. The only thing I'm an extremist is for my love of Ridgewood.
So I just want to, I'm going to start with what Evan said as my first point. I believe I did use the word trapped, and not only financially, but geographically. For those who were participating in the original purchase of the land, one of the rally cries from the neighborhood was after the 1986 closing of Glen School, there was a sense of isolation from the neighborhood, and they wanted to be integrated into Ridgewood more. And this park was a vehicle to do that. Right now, the buffer, whatever it is, the land, is not usable because there's no public parking, it's not promoted, it's not listed in our inventory. So it is not only financially trapped, but it's geographically trapped. And you see that when, we're gonna have to sort out with the open house, I hope we include, Keith, detailed instructions on how to park, because it is landlocked right now. We can't get there. If you wanted to go over and walk there with 3 of your friends, it's geographically isolated. In addition to that, I'm very mindful that we have a combination of passive and multipurpose land. Kings Pond is 100% passive. We have more passive land in our park system than we do recreational. And the express purchase was detailed at the time, and this is very important for all of us, because the whole town bought it. One neighborhood did not. A dedicated tax bought it, and Bergen County bought it. And the deal was that it was going to be multi-purpose and include athletics and passive. It was not, I do not believe the town would have gone for it, the sports groups advocated for it, if we had said we're buying another 7 acres of passive land. It was a very tight economic point. It was 2008, 2009. And right now that park is trapped, it's isolated. And with respect to the dead wood, we lost 42 trees already. There is dead wood there because the project has failed to progress. Those trees on the berm died because people weren't watching it and a whole host of other reasons, and there's a lot of that. So maybe, people disagree with my expression, but it is financially trapped, stuck, money's held up in it, opportunity lost is trapped in there because there's things we haven't done. So that's the one thing. 2, if anybody wants additional information regarding the Sunshine Binder in advance, you guys email us a lot, email us, let us know. If it's not deliberative and legal says we can give it to you, we'll just give it to you. And I would snap a photo and send it. And I think the clerk's office would do the same. So if people want pre-information, as long as it's not deliberative and we can clear it, we'll send it to you. Dead, blah, 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 not active, I went with parking. I do just want to say with respect to Matrix, when Matrix came on, I made a mistake and I said it was $39,000. That's the first round of testing. The second round of testing is now going to be, 60. I mean, it's not heading in the...
As it stands today, based on what Matrix thinks we need to do, once we have input from Tom Farrell at DEP, that number may increase.
Okay, so that's a significant amount of money that we didn't have insight to this budget, and now we've, 1.5'd it again. And I'm worried we're going to have to 1.5 it again after that. This is expensive testing, and we have to pay for it. With respect to trees and the quotes, trees come, I've learned, whips, saplings, trees. The most expensive tree in Ridgewood from the taxpayer is a Central Business District tree. It lives in the harshest conditions. They're the most expensive. They're burdened with the cost of the tree. They're limited in scope and the watering program. The all-in Central Business District tree is about $1,100 because of the watering contract. That's an expensive tree. A regular street tree that's like under a wire, not so much. And so we round it out. But I don't want people thinking when we talk about a park tree, which we would buy in bulk, that we're going to spend $1,100 on a park tree. And I don't believe I used the phrase non-native because I really prefer invasive. And invasive species are an important part of us. So if I did say non-native, I'm surprised, and I'm going to blame
I think you said invasive.
And either way, I just want to say, if I did, apologies. I don't love the term. I really do, for legal writing and for the ordinance, and I think all three of us, when we've discussed, prefer the term invasive. And last 2 points, because this is regarding access. Hearing is the silent disability. It's often not discussed. It's something that affects a disproportionate amount of Americans as they age. Keith, you choose an example,
Apparently.
would be the prime thing. But it is one, it is.
Unknowingly, I fall into that
He did
category.
it is the silent disability, and we hear it time and time again. If anybody in the audience needs any of us to speak up, I spoke louder because I've worked with Ellie, and she went like this to me. Please let us know. Please let Evan know. It's a very serious thing. We want people to hear us. We want it to be recorded. So if anybody, kind gestures only, maybe like this, we would welcome that. And we'll be talking more about hearing and how it's an invisible disability in our community when MJ comes here. And lastly, also with access, Susan did come to our access meeting. Was great. I want to say how grateful I am that our first responders with the incident she referenced of wandering children had this training. Wandering is a serious issue for our neurodivergent community, and I'm very grateful to the way, I can't discuss the individual incident, the way the police and fire handled it. That being said, the Joy Doe, that's open to citizens. So Susan, if you're still listening, you should come with us on the field trip. And if we want additional autism and neurodivergent relating to wandering, the YMCA is running parent socials. Laura McKenna is heading them up, and they've been widely attended. So those are just my 2 access plugs, and that's it. Sorry, I had to.
Anybody else? Let's call it a night.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.